Hello, everyone, and thanks for giving us your time today for VR Download. I'm Ian Hamilton in New York, joined by David Heaney from London in the UploadVR studios as we talk about the next steps in personal computing. We're wearing Quest 3 headsets today with last generation Meta avatars. We're using hand tracking with built-in microphones. We've got tablets in front of us that show us notes and comments so we can interact with our audience when we're live. Thank you to our patrons for supporting the work we do on UploadVR.com. In case this is your first time here, you can become a paying member at UploadVR.com to support our work directly. We thank our patrons by name here on this podcast and list it out on our website. That includes XR Developer News, Podum, HoloNet, Mike Manzano, Justin Corcoran, Richard Meller, Parmesan Cubits, Steve Lucas, David White, Deepanch, and Soul Presence. Sincerely, thank you all for your support. Hello to everyone out there, and please feel free to share where you're watching us from. And hello to our time travelers catching us at different times or speeds. Those of us watching us through a universal translator of some kind into their native language. Hello to you as well. We've got today's show divided into a smart glasses section and a virtual reality section. I think I'm going to be focused on monitoring comments for any questions pretty much up until the last topic of today's show when I hope we have a bit of discussion. David, what do we have today?
Yeah, hello everyone. It's great to be here. I was on site at Meta Connect last week for Connect 2025, so we weren't able to do a broadcast. I was essentially writing the entire time. I hope you enjoyed our coverage. We put out 20 articles in total, and now we have our VR Download Connect special. It's always interesting to go to events like this because for some of the people there, they've been working hard all year, and this is kind of almost their party, their social meetup, their time where they're not working. But for press and media like us, we're going there, and this is very much so we're working the whole time. So many people want to meet up. There's all these parties, but I wasn't at any of that because I was writing the articles, unfortunately. So
we're like ghosts at our own major event of the year.
Yeah. I mean, look, I hope everyone who was there and having fun did enjoy it. It's great that lots of developers and Meta's partners and employees do get to have that. But yeah, it was a lot of work, probably the toughest week of my year. So I really hope everyone does like our coverage, and let's get into discussing it on the podcast today. So as Ian mentioned, we will have a smart glasses section and a virtual reality section, just like the recap article that we have on uploadvr.com right now, which if you need to read later or have already read, you'll see the main announcements. Here we're going to discuss them. So in the smart glasses section, we'll talk about the Gen 2 Ray-Ban glasses, the Oakley Meta Vanguard, the Garmin integration that all the glasses are getting, my hands-on time with the Meta Ray-Ban display and Meta Neural Band, the big hardware launch of Connect 2025, obviously. We'll then talk about the SDK that's coming from Meta to allow developers to, in their phone app, interact with the glasses. So they're not running apps on the glasses, but they are leveraging the glasses, cameras, microphones, and speakers from a phone app. And we'll talk about what that might enable. We will then talk about the upcoming feature for all of Meta's glasses called Conversation Focus, which will boost nearby voices. It's primarily, I think, an accessibility feature, but an interesting one that Ian saw some research on years ago and has kind of been following that story. And then we will finish up the glasses section by talking about the article that we just published on uploadvr.com now, which is about Michael Abrash and Mark Zuckerberg's comments on where they see the future smart glasses going. And I don't just mean the HUD and the AR. This is even talking about the glasses with no kind of display. They're talking about how eventually they will have an always-on, proactive and reactive contextual AI. So that's an interesting one. There's obviously big privacy concerns there, and we'll get into that and what that might mean for the future of smart glasses. Then we will have our virtual reality section of this show, where we talk about all the VR announcements. And interestingly, as I'm writing an article at the moment about Meta is back to using the term VR, you will notice that the term mixed reality was almost not used at all at Connect, and the term VR was used a lot by Meta. So that's an interesting kind of turn of events. But let's talk about that. So we'll be talking about, firstly, their quick little tease of the next evolution of the Quest Horizon OS system UI. Not much to say there, but we can see that that's something they're still working on, and it answers the question of, have they given up on Navigator or are they improving it? It's the former. Then we'll talk about the Avatar Fire and Ash 3D teaser that you can watch on your Quest headset right now for a limited time. That's obviously coming from the James Cameron partnership, which is what we'll discuss when we're bringing up the Avatar teaser. We'll then discuss Blumhouse soon releasing their own Quest 3 app that will show Megan and the Black Phone with immersive effects. So you're in a virtual cinema environment, but there's actually kind of immersive VR effects happening at the same time. First time, as far as we were aware, that's come from an official company, like the maker of the movie, not just some kind of third party or mod project. We will then discuss the news that Discord is coming to Quest as a native app, and Meta said that will also include, activity. So people on Discord will be able to see what Quest games you're playing. We will then discuss Meta Horizon Engine. Meta is replacing the Unity runtime of Horizon Worlds with their own custom engine. And they say that this brings 4 times faster world loading and support for 100 plus users in the same instances. Then our penultimate topic will be Meta Horizon Studio. It's the upcoming overhaul of the Horizon Worlds desktop editor, and it will leverage Horizon Engine. So this is how you will build for Horizon Engine. And it would also have a significantly upgraded AI assistant that will be able to AI generate just about anything. It's kind of like, if you're in the AI world or you follow it a little bit, the equivalent of the likes of Codex from OpenAI, but specifically designed for building VR worlds. Finally, we will discuss my hands-on time with Meta Horizon Hyperscape, which is rolling out now in the US. It should be available to most people in the US, and it allows you to capture real-world scenes using your Quest 3 or 3S to then visit photorealistically. And this blew me away. Of everything I tried to connect, which to be fair was 3 things that I really tried hands-on. Well, 4 things, I guess. I tried those new Oakley Vanguard glasses. I tried the Avatar 3D trailer. I tried the Meta Ray-Ban display glasses, and I tried Horizon Hyperscape. Horizon Hyperscape blew me away. So it'll definitely be interesting to talk about that one at the end of the show.
Yeah, I'm looking over the comments there. My heart goes out to Devin, who wrote, where was it? The pattern, it was something like the usage pattern or AR will be all the rage until we get too depressed and then need to retreat into our VR escapes. That is describing a fair amount of my VR usage in Apple Vision Pro in recent weeks. I find quite a wonderful escape in there, and I do think about that overall. Why don't we just move through these? Go ahead.
I was going to directly respond to that. And that's actually very interesting because this is what John Carmack said a few years ago. Carmack has said this repeatedly, actually, when asked about does he see AR or VR being the big opportunity. The default view, right, the common knowledge is that AR is going to be so much bigger than VR. And maybe in the nice parts of the first world, that might be true. But on a global scale, and this is Carmack's words, I'm quoting him, this is not my view. He's saying that most people in the world live kind of relatively cramped lives in these giant megacities in places that are a lot less wealthy than the first world, where it's a lot less appealing to go and walk around. Some of these megacities, there is no park to go and walk around anywhere near you. You're going from your job to your tiny apartment, and that's your life. So again, Carmack's words. So according to Carmack's view, so many people around the world will actually want to spend time in VR because it will be more appealing compared to their physical reality. Whereas if you're in a nice, wealthy part of the first world, the bubble, the Hunger Games capital, whatever analogy you want to make, of course, having AR for your nice real world that you already enjoy is going to be more appealing to you. So that's gets into, interesting kind of social philosophy and stuff. But I think it's interesting that John Carmack talked about this years ago.
Well, there was one commenter there that was like, is the VR section of our show today going to be 5 seconds long? And no, it's not. It's going to be a big hearty section when we have a lot of discussion. But I appreciated the joke, I think, trying to make a comment on that would probably be the overall vibe of the Connect announcements. But going back to that last subject, one thing I also want to just... One thing I've noticed as a trend amongst developers out there is they all have a very similar office. And the office could be messy, or the office could be clean, but it is 4 walls, a roof, and a floor of just surrounded by trinkets of either focus or inspiration. And we've all got the same office, and depending on whether it's camera ready or not. It depends, like that's whether the office is clean or empty. On the Apple Vision Pro, they just added the ability to not record your surroundings inside of your recordings, which is fantastic. So I don't have to worry anymore about whether my environment is messy or clean before I try to show my audience what a cool thing looks like in VR. But the flip there is just what I noticed amongst devs is just I control this one space. This is my VR space. This is my mixed reality space. It's my dev space. This is my creative space. And ultimately, like, I think that's the biggest luxury that a lot of devs have in their lives. Like they've spent all of their time curating the most wonderful workspace they possibly can imagine. And for a growing number of them, a VR headset is a fundamental part of that home workspace. All right, we ready to talk about AR glasses and smart glasses now?
Yeah, I mean, on the VR thing, I think this is an evolution of very long trends, right? Like, VR is not the first kind of escapism, it's just the best. Books are a form of escapism, movies, TV shows. These are all ways that for well over 100 years now, huge sections of the population have used to escape the difficulties of modern life. And so that's just a pushback against, some people may bring up the dystopian aspect of this. I think it's just a richer evolution of the kind of escapism that is a natural and healthy part of life. But yeah, on the topic of how much are we going to talk about smart glasses versus VR, we have 7 smart glasses topics and 7 VR topics. So hopefully it will be pretty equal, but we'll have to see how the discussion goes on each topic. It's hard to predict something like that in advance. Let's just get straight into the smart glasses stuff, starting with the most mundane news. The regular Ray-Ban Meta glasses, the one without a display, have gotten a Gen 2 upgrade. And all this does is bring them up to parity with the Oakley Meta Houston glasses that recently shipped. So the 2 ways in which the Oakley Meta Houston glasses were better than Ray-Bans were they could do 3K video recording instead of just 1080p, and they had up to twice the battery life. So not a difficult one to predict, I guess, in advance. Meta has just done the same for the regular Ray-Bans. So the Gen 2 Ray-Bans, they have the same design, same everything else. It's just that they have these battery and video recording upgrade. That's it. They are available already. They were launched immediately for $380 compared to $300 for the Gen 1. They're keeping the Gen 1 around for now as a more affordable option. They haven't reduced the price, so it's $300 for the Gen 1 Ray-Bans, $380 for the Gen 2, and $400 for the Oakley Houston ones. I don't really get why the Oakley Houston exists then. I don't like the design. Some people do. But I guess maybe it's just better to have more options. But there's nothing too much to discuss about this news. It's very mundane, I guess.
Yep. I want to just move on to the next one there. I don't see any big, I think the comments are going to build. Davin Wright immediately replied about Hyperscape, which is going to be our last subject. So we'll get back to Hyperscape, but you're exactly right, Davin, out there with your theory of where everything is going. So it makes perfect sense. We got the next Oakley story here.
Sure. Yeah. So as was rumored and leaked for quite a long time, Meta announced an open pre-orders for Oakley Meta Vanguard. We thought it was going to be called Oakley Meta Sphera because they do leverage Oakley's Sphera design, but they've decided to give it its own unique kind of product name and call it the Vanguard glasses. So compared to all of Meta's other smart glasses, the difference here is that they have a centered camera, which has a wider field of view. So I think it's 100 degrees for all of the other glasses and 122 for this one. The other difference is that it has IP67 resistance. And Meta told me the battery in it is designed to work in colder and warmer temperatures. So I once tried to use my Ray-Ban Meta glasses to record dog sledding in Canada, and they died pretty much instantly because of the cold temperature. A lot of batteries in consumer electronics can't survive these kind of very cold temperatures. According to Meta, at Connect, they told me that this is specifically designed to be able to operate in these temperatures, as well as, of course, the IP67, meaning it can take a lot more, snow dust and rain and such like that. So it's coming in 4 colors. You have this kind of gold, I forget the specific names, so please bear with me of these colors. I'm just going to say this kind of reddy, purpley color. this kind of bluey purpley color. I, I should have put the names in my notes. And then this kind of
No, we can't.
black color. So here is me, if I can find this, wearing the bluey purpley color. And yet, these are actually heavier than the other non-display glasses, but they are actually also more comfortable. I find these to be incredibly comfortable. It's probably just how the weight is distributed. And I think if you are someone who wants to record first-person footage, this is going to be a lot better because the camera is centered and wider field of view. So I know that I think Ian's not a fan of the design here. I am, but that's going to be personal preference.
I just want to poke you right in the forehead for this look. I don't know. It's a thing. I don't know. But yeah, I get the camera being in the middle being a big difference. You can see it in the videos, how the offset really dramatically kind of changes what you're capturing. And it's actually kind of a little frustrating, right? To kind of know that my Meta glasses, earlier generations, are capturing at this off angle when I could upgrade and get like a fixed angle capture of it. I don't know. And then you can capture with a VR headset too, of course, but that's a completely different thing, right? When you're doing spatial video and that sort of thing.
Yeah. We should point out, of course, this does have the same privacy light. It's just above here. That's what this is. So it seemed to be a little bit brighter, but I can't tell that off a 5-minute demo. It did seem to be a little bit brighter, but I don't think you're going to miss that this thing has a camera. I think actually having the light right beside the camera and in the middle makes it even more obvious that what it is a camera. But I think if you go to like ski slopes or biking, a lot of people are already using GoPros and things like that. So it probably is just more socially normal. But of course, there's nothing stopping you from using these in regular life as well.
So little out there saying the demo failed, but all hands-on demos seem overwhelmingly positive. Wait for David to run through his hands-on of the display here, in particular, to really see a different view than you're getting at a lot of other places of the breakdown here of how these things work. I think people are torn because everyone wants to comment on, like, was it a good idea to do live demos that failed that spectacularly? And then Bosworth, of course, coming back with his own sort of, what do you think's going to go wrong? You're all watching our event anyways, right? Like that's me. I filled in the second half of that comment. The first half of that was kind of Bosworth. The second half is me making fun of, like, he's got a point, right? Like, you're all watching his event. Why? Like, what's the harm of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that more when we talk about the display glasses. Just to be very clear to anyone who's not really familiar, these glasses on screen right now do not have a display of any kind. You could argue that they do have one internal LED, just as all the Meta glasses so far do, on your right. So they can show a single LED, a 1x1 display. You could technically argue it's a 1-pixel display, but I think we'll not get into that kind of technicality. We can say in a way that I think everyone understands that this doesn't have a display. But yeah, when it comes to those demos, I think the reaction I've seen is very mixed. So you get obviously the expected people reveling in Mark Zuckerberg squirming on stage. I think that's very much so expected. You wouldn't expect anything less from the internet and people in general. But if you look at the reaction from people within tech, I think there are two positive reactions. One is that people are a bit sick of these overproduced infomercial style Tim Cook's Apple productions, that there's no authenticity there. Some journalists point out the deep irony that Apple flies people over to WWDC, and we've both been there, and then Tim Cook comes on stage for 5 seconds and then plays the exact same video that everyone at home is watching. There's no audience interaction at all. They're not even speaking. It's completely pre-recorded. So a lot of people are sick of that, and so they appreciated that it is an actual live demo. And then also a lot of people in tech understand that demos are cursed, right? There are a lot of people, if you work in the technology industry for long enough, you will have given a demo that has failed. That is just a part of tech demos, and it doesn't really reflect whether the product will be Flawed that much. The first FaceTime demo, I think, failed when Apple showed the iPhone 4, and FaceTime worked great when the iPhone 4 shipped. What was the
And
other?
hysterically,
Like,
FaceTime still fails on the web today for us. Like we
sure,
want to use web to, yeah, but
sure. But
yeah.
I'm just saying on the phone, right? You call someone on your iPhone to another iPhone, FaceTime works. I think we can all say that FaceTime works on your iPhone. And, iPhone 4 shipped, FaceTime worked. Same thing with Face ID on the iPhone 10 or, when they first showed it on stage, it failed. It didn't unlock the phone, and yet people got it, and it worked perfectly. I don't think a demo has any reflection on the product. It can, but it doesn't necessarily. And we'll have to see when we get a review unit. But I wouldn't read too much into it. Their explanation of the reason is interesting. They say the live AI demo failed because the speakers broadcasting out what the chef was saying triggered live AI on every single Ray-Ban Meta glasses in the entire building. And then it was all the traffic was rerouted to a development server on purpose to make it smoother. But the irony is that actually then caused it to just fail, according to Meta. That's their explanation. As for the video call fail, they say that there was a bug in the firmware that they were using where if the display was to go to sleep the instant that a notification for a call came in, that would cause a race condition, which would then just break the system and not really allow any calls to come in. They claim that's already been fixed. So that's obviously one of those fixes that just, oh crap, we haven't, properly handled. What if the display turns off exactly as a call comes in? We'll see. We'll see. We're gonna hopefully get a review unit next month, but we'll get more into that when we talk about it. Let's just move on, I think, to the next topic here, so we can get through some of these more mundane ones. And that is the Garmin watch integration.
Can I talk about the hand tracking here at some point, David? I'm on V79. Do you remember it being this keyed in? I've got my hands on my keyboard here.
I think it always had. I think sometimes you underestimate hand tracking. It's gotten a lot better in the past few years, and their last update to it, I think, was maybe 6 months ago. But we have some conversation sometimes, and we'll talk about that later about, what's optical hand tracking good enough for, and what do you need a wristband for? I think the hand tracking in Quest 3 and 3S today is remarkably good.
Oh yeah, no, there's lots of things to talk about here. There's all sorts of privacy things, but yeah, keep going on this. Let's get through this.
Sure. So, a lot of this was sort of presented and reported by a lot of people as just being exclusive to the Vanguard glasses, but from what we've ascertained, this is a feature coming to all the Meta glasses, where you will have integration with the Garmin watch. If you use a Garmin watch, that's good news. If you don't, maybe you don't care. So there's two levels of integration here. One is that while you're in a workout, so that could be while you're cycling and your hands are on the wheel and you're in the moment, you can ask Meta AI things like, what's my heart rate or how am I doing? And it will reference your current workout and see, you're this far, you're up to speed. Normally you're a little bit faster. You need to kind of push a bit more. It also has this feature when you connect a Garmin watch called auto capture. So once you're during a workout, instead of having to initiate recording at all, when you hit key milestones like distance, or you start to ramp up your heart rate or go really fast, the system will start to record videos for you and then afterwards present them. And then I guess the final integration here is that you can overlay your workout stats, and you just have little tick boxes for exactly what you do and don't want to include onto the videos that you record. So it's what you'd expect from a Garmin integration. I don't think there's anything too crazy to say about this, other than it could be a little bit useful if you're a Garmin watch user that has these glasses too.
Yep. What do we got next? I'm looking at the comments here. Guy making fun of me typing out my passwords. That is where I was going with that. I want to talk about the difference in architectures of operating systems at some point. Pastel tuning in. Hello to Biggs and all of our YouTube members. Dev, and I've seen you all commenting, John. Let's see, CJ out there. Yeah, thank you all to our YouTube members as well. I'm going to make that pitch right now. I guess it's just a good time as any to just, become a member on UploadVR.com if you can. Support our work. David really did go above and beyond last week. We joked on one of our podcasts about you did not fly business class, correct? Right?
No, I never fly business class.
So 20 hours in the air, 20 hours during one of the most important weeks of the year for us to cover everything he's spending in the air in economy class to bring you the VR news that you need. So let's move on in the next story.
Yeah, I think the last thing we should say about the Garmin watch integration actually is just that this is a great example of something that Google and Apple, when they enter the smart glasses space, they can already leverage their existing devices here, right? For Google, you have the Pixel Watch and Fitbit. If you're not aware, Google owns Fitbit. And obviously for Apple, the Apple Watch. But this is another example of how Meta doesn't have these ecosystems. So it has to go and actually make these partnerships. They also have Strava integration, I forgot to mention, so you can overlay your Strava stats as well. But you can imagine Meta is probably reaching out to other companies now, like Whoop, for example. Whoop being, interestingly, a company that makes a wristband without a display, but not for EMG. In fact, Whoop's wristband specifically filters out some of the noise that is introduced by EMG, which is something that I learned recently. So there's kind of opposite devices, but you can imagine those kind of integrations over time. For now, it's just Garmin on the hardware and also Strava for the software. Now let's talk about the kind of big product launch, the big hardware launch of Connect 2025, which is, of course, the Meta Ray-Ban display. So there were lots of rumors for this. We've been talking about it for months, but it is finally official. It is $800, and that includes Meta Neural Band in the box. It will initially only be available in physical stores in the United States, such as Best Buy and LensCrafters and the Ray-Ban stores, from September 30th. And from what we can ascertain, you have to go in and get a demo to buy them. You have to actually get a demo. And part of that is just because this wristband comes in multiple sizes, 3 sizes. And so they need to know what your wrist size is to sell you the thing in the first place. Over time, Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, has indicated that they do want to eventually make this something you can buy online. You could obviously just measure your own wrist just as you do when you're buying another smartwatch. But I think while they're still likely ramping up supply, it makes sense to get it to people first who want to go in and actually try it out over time. And obviously, there are also 2 sizes of the glasses as well. So that's a big consideration. But let's talk about my experience with it. So I was able to go hands-on at Connect. Interestingly, we did not get the private behind closed doors demo that many other outlets got, including outlets much smaller than ours, which is really strange. I kind of thought I was supposed to. Meta had been talking about doing a behind closed doors demo, but it turned out that was only in reference to Hyperscape. That meant that I had to go to the kind of general communal demo area much later in the day after the keynote when the product had already been announced. And there I was able to get a demo, though it was a little bit more hectic alongside, other general attendees and standing the entire time and in a group where we were kind of shepherded between rooms. So there wasn't as much freedom to test things, but I was still able to get a lot of testing done. And right before I left for the airport the day after, so this was very late in the day for me, 4 a.m. in my time zone, I then woke up in the morning, to be clear, covered the developer keynote, and then I went and tried this again. So I did 2 separate sessions on 2 separate devices. So that also rules out any issue of, was just this unit faulty? No, these were 2 separate devices. And in case you even think, well, what if they were the same device 2 days in a row? I tried both colors. So that's definitely not the case. So I was able to rule out any issues that might just be, one device being, I don't know, buggy firmware or some sort of hardware issue. I got a good feel. They both felt the same, the 2 devices I tried on day 1 and day 2. And then as soon as I finished that, I went back to the airport to fly home. So I'm very curious as to why Meta would not give the leading XR news site in the world the behind closed doors demos when it did give sites that are objectively smaller than ours demo. And I'm saying that simply because it means it's not reach. The answer is not just, you are not above a certain reach. There were sites and other outlets that have half of our reach that were given a demo. But also the thing I noticed there is that these demos where they were kind of very carefully handled, you can, I read some of these other impressions. You can see even the same exact words and phrases together in a way that suggests to me that there were some kind of primed talking points out there. I had the advantage, I can guess, for the upside of this demo situation of not having that. I went in with no priming, no one telling me what I should be thinking or trying. And I was able to just try out the device on my own and figure out what I thought about it. And you can read my article on UploadVR.com, but now I'll kind of run you through what I thought. So the obvious first thing here is the form factor to talk about and the style and the light leak. So these glasses are, as you can quite clearly see, bulkier than Ray-Ban Meta. With the regular Ray-Ban Meta glasses, most people don't clock that you're wearing smart glasses. I've had them for 2 years now. They do have thicker temples than the regular Wayfarers that aren't smart, but they're pretty much like, other than that, the rims are the same. The thing that really gives it away is the camera, but people have to kind of look for that. When it comes to the Meta Ray-Ban display, that is not the case. They are so bulky that it crosses a line where people realize these aren't normal glasses. You can see on screen here on the left, the regular Ray-Ban Meta without a display and the Meta Ray-Ban display. You can see the chunkiness here. I'll bring another comparison up on screen so you can see it even more clearly. Here we go. You can see that there is quite a significant size difference. And then I also brought along my X-Real 1 Pro glasses purely to do these comparisons. And for these comparisons, by the way, you may wonder, what is this surface? There was just a chair here in this communal demo area, so I just quickly took off the glasses and threw them down in the chair and started snapping photos as quickly as I could to get a size comparison.
You don't have? Do you have a little portable scale? It's a little bit alarming to go through security with a little portable scale, but I need to get you one if you don't have one.
I do, but I didn't for that exact reason that, I'm not going to go on an international flight to the United States of all countries with a scale in my backpack. I feel like I don't know, I guess it would be fine, but I just feel like it would be such a, oh yeah, I'm using the Wear glasses. I don't know. It just felt.
Yeah, I mean, if you're wearing the Meta glasses, you wear a pair of them, one on top of your head, another pair in front of your glasses, and that's how you explain it to them.
Yeah. So when it comes to weight, that's a good thing to point out, a good question. In fact, what are we talking about in terms of weight here? So the regular non-smart Ray-Bans are 45 grams, the ones that you might get at a store that don't have any technology in them. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses, without a display, over here, are 52 grams. So a lot of people don't realize that. The Ray-Ban Meta glasses are only 7 grams heavier than the non-smart equivalent. But of course, for the display glasses here, you're jumping up to 69 grams. So it's a bigger jump than from regular Ray-Ban to Ray-Ban Meta, going from Ray-Ban Meta to Meta Ray-Ban display. Notice how careful I'm being with these names, because you will notice if you're listening carefully, the regular non-display glasses that are just speakers, microphones, and cameras are called Ray-Ban Meta, but the display glasses are called Meta Ray-Ban display. So from a quickly speaking perspective, this is going to be fun to not trip those up, but I hope you can follow along. So yes, the point I'm trying to make here is that if you care about social acceptability, which a lot of people do, this does cross a certain line that the regular Ray-Ban Meta glasses did not cross. This is the sand color that I'm wearing here, and the other image I had up is me wearing the black color. You can see here that these temples are so thick that it does look like something is slightly off. It looks almost like you're wearing kind of cartoon glasses. Now, for some people, this will be a deal breaker. For others, it won't matter at all. This is very much so a social, personal acceptability question. For some people, thick rimmed glasses are even a style choice these days. Because of our work, when I'm walking around in public, I always find myself looking at people's glasses and, they're regular glasses and thinking, how thick are those rims and temples? What are they wearing? Could you put technology in there? I find myself all the time in my daily life thinking that now. And so, you do see some people with regular glasses that are like this, but it's very rare, and they're usually a very specific type of person that kind of can pull that off with a kind of fashion choice. So that's one aspect of the kind of ergonomics here. Now, that said, the comfort, I was only obviously able to test these for about 15 minutes at a time on day 1 and day 2. We will bring you a full comprehensive review when we get a review unit about how it feels to wear for multiple hours. But in my time, I did not find these uncomfortable. They felt fine, I think, because a lot of the weight is actually on the temples rather than on the frames. It's not as bad as like a headset where things are pushing down in your face. It's more, I would guess, against the side of your head and ears. But in my demo time, I didn't find it uncomfortable at all, I should point out. Again, we'll need to see how that pans out full term. The other thing is, of course, for social acceptability, a specification called light leak. I think, Ian, you need to maybe get your floor height there. I think your mic's still on there, so you may want to unmute and remute it. So light leak is a specification of glasses with a display that refers to if someone is standing in front of you, what percentage of that display's light can they see on the outside? So 100% would be what you're seeing on the inside, right? So the kind of monocular HUD that you can see in the marketing image. How much of that can people see on the outside? Well, Meta says that the number is 2%, the light leak number. That's their figure. And I was able to verify this. You can see in this image a kind of very faint blue glow on the side of the lens, but that's only at some angles. And what I did was I walked up to people in this communal demo area and I said, can you tell whether I have the display on? And then I used the finger gesture that we'll talk about soon to turn the display on and off. And the answer was no. Now, maybe if we had spent more time and I got them at more angles, they would be able to. But in this limited testing, that again, we will test further when we get the review unit, in this limited testing, nobody could even tell whether I had the display on or off. And so if you've seen these clickbait YouTube thumbnails where it's the display showing here as a big square, they are fake. Categorically, they are fake. They are Photoshop. That is not the reality. People cannot actually see what's on the display. They can't even tell in my testing whether the display's on. Now, I imagine that in darkness, in a dark room, you're going to be able to tell whether the display's on. But again, from all of my testing, and I personally walked up to people with the glasses on and had a look up at their face, with their permission, of course, I couldn't see anything that would indicate what kind of app was running, never mind things like what the message you're seeing. So this is a private display, 98%, I guess, according to Meta's figure. So that finishes on our style, form factor, and light leak discussion. What is the thing I actually like to use? What is the Meta neural band like? What is the heads-up display like? So, like the regular rainbow Meta glasses, if you want, you can control this with Meta AI using your voice, or you can tap the side to do things like play, pause. You can also, double tap to skip a song, or you can also swipe to change the volume. But unlike any smart glasses that have shipped to date, these come with the Meta neural band in the box. And you can see here a photo of me wearing the black color. And here's a photo of me wearing the sand color. So it feels very light on your wrist. It is no more cumbersome than something like a Fitbit. But what this allows you to do is use finger gestures to control the heads-up display. So the finger gestures you use are 4 currently. To wake the display or turn the display off, you double tap your thumb to your middle finger. Double tap like that to turn it off and on. That's just toggling the display off and on. If you single tap your thumb to your middle finger, it will bring up the main menu. So that's the kind of back or menu button. Then to navigate around the interface, so go left, right, up, or down, you swipe your thumb against the side of your index finger as if it was kind of a virtual D-pad. So left, right, forward, back. Hopefully you can all kind of see this. And then to click.
Those gestures are supported in Quest.
Some of them are in some apps, but not universally. No, you can't scroll the Horizon OS system like that, but they do have a micro gestures SDK. But yeah, just to continue, to then click on something that you've scrolled along with, you click your thumb to your index finger, the same pinch you would do in Apple Vision Pro or Quest, right? Except you're not pointing and pinching, you're just pinching, and the cursor is if you're using like a TV remote left or right. And then the final gesture that is currently implemented is for adjusting the volume or for zooming on the camera. And it's the coolest of all, and it works like magic. So you take your finger, your index finger and thumb, and pinch them together and twist as if you're adjusting a virtual knob like this, just twisting your finger, and it works like magic. So those are the 4 kind of gestures. I guess you could say 5 if you're counting the thumb double tap and single tap as different gestures. But so thumb to middle finger, thumb to index finger, twist, and swipe against your index finger with your thumb. Those are the 4 kinds of gestures. In December, Meta also plans to release a firmware update that will let you do something that sounds out of science fiction, to use your index finger to trace out letters on a physical surface, which could be a table or it could just be your leg. And then those letters will be the text entry system that you can use to respond to messages or other text entry purposes. Very few people got to try this. The Verge did get to try it, and they said it worked shockingly well. But we're going to wait till it releases in December to see whether that's true. Mark Zuckerberg claims he's up to 30 words per minute on this text swiping system. But again, I was not able to actually try that one out. So the HUD you actually navigate with these gestures takes up 20 degrees of your field of view. And that is, let me see if I can bring up and yeah, this image will be fine. That is equivalent to if you right now take your right arm and extend it fully outwards and then turn your hand inwards 90 degrees. This is probably easier this way. So turn your hands inwards 90 degrees, fully extended. That's the width of the HUD in your field of view. And then do the same, but with your hand upwards 90 degrees, and that's the height at full arm extension. I apologize if that's uncomfortable, but you now have an idea of the size of the HUD that's only shown to one eye, to be clear, and we'll get into that one eye part later. The HUD itself is this smartwatch-like UI, which makes sense because this is a 600 by 600 resolution display. You can't do a lot of super fancy UI. And it has 3 tabs. The center tab has your time, date, notifications, and a UI button for Meta AI. And the right tab has a list of apps, right? A 2-column, 4 rows at a time. Scroll down them again with your little side swipe against your index finger controls. The left tab has quick controls, do not disturb, settings, shortcuts to key things like the camera, the kind of quick controls you would get in a control center on your phone. And so I find all this to just be a little bit too much and a little bit too finicky, having to kind of constantly scroll over things. It's like the difference between using a TV remote where you have to, press a button, left, right, up, down, select to go through things versus something like a touch screen on your phone where you just touch the exact icon you want. So yeah, so the gestures themselves of the EMG wristband, they work 100% of the time. I know this because you get a little vibration on the wristband as soon as a gesture is detected, and every single gesture I threw at it, no matter how I adjusted this band, worked. Some people claim that this was uncomfortable for them because they had to that it was adjusted too tight for them, but that was by their Meta handlers in their private demos, and I think they wanted to prioritize making sure it worked over comfort. But in my time, I was just walking about trying to get away from the group, and I adjusted it looser and got it to the point that is the same as the Fitbit I wear all day, and it felt completely comfortable and worked 100% of the time. So I was really, really impressed by the band. When it comes to the glasses themselves, though, I was less impressed. We'll get into the main reason in a second, but the first reason is just because this interface is, in my opinion, kind of over-designed. It's too clunky, it's too much scrolling about and clicking. And also the glasses are not fast, right? They have the same chip as the original Ray-Ban Meta glasses from 2 years ago. Meta confirmed that it uses Qualcomm's AR1 Gen 1 chip. And so the interface, when you launch an app, when you scroll about, it just never felt responsive and smooth. And this is very emblematic of a first-generation product. If you had some first-generation Apple products, the iPad, for example, was very slow at loading web pages, the original iPad. The original iPhone didn't even have 3G, so when you're off Wi-Fi, you were on 2G speeds. It's not abnormal for a first-generation product to be slow, but it is something that we do need to point out because that expectation has to be very, very clear here, and especially if they want to add more and more features over time, and maybe one day, as we'll talk about soon, bring an SDK for the display itself and apps. That's going to get more and more challenging. Right now, there is really limited compute available, and it shows that they're using a 2-year-old chip. It actually reminds me a lot of Quest Pro, right? They pushed out Quest Pro as like a higher-end version of Quest 2, right? In the same way, this is a higher-end version of Ray-Ban Meta, but it still had a chip that was essentially the same as Quest 2. I think there's a lot of parallels in that regard. And so I think if I were Meta, I would significantly simplify the UI and UX around this kind of swiping and tapping. Eventually, this will get solved by eye tracking. I think that EMG is going to be a massive, massive part of the future of computing. Very clearly, by trying this, how well it works is stunning. And to be very clear, when I'm demonstrating these gestures right now, I'm bringing up my hands so you can see what I'm doing. But in reality, you don't need to. You can have your hands at your sides. You can have your hands completely in the dark. You can have your hands resting on your knee. Or, as I tried, you can put your hand in your pocket. It still works with your hand in your pocket, even with stuff touching your fingers. It doesn't, because of how this works, it's reading the muscle activation in your wrist. So it doesn't matter if something is covering your fingers. It works even if you have gloves on. I think from what I talked to someone, tried it with gloves. I didn't have my own gloves. I talked to someone in line who did try it with gloves. I'll try that myself when I get the product. But notably, back in 2022, Meta actually showed off a prototype of the HUD. Ignore that. These are not the HUD glasses. But this prototype here, you can see, had a much better design, in my opinion, where everything was just kind of a couple of swipes away. And I think there's a lot of work to be done in the UI. So in general, using a glasses UI with EMG, but without the eye tracking, because remember the Orion demo last year that had the wristband also used eye tracking, I think it all just feels a little bit too clunky. And the combination of the clunkiness and the sluggishness from the old chip means that this doesn't feel like something you can really, really quickly, with a couple of taps while you're walking along, bring up the exact experience you want. Maybe over time, as I get more used to it, right? These were very small sessions, maybe, but I've just kept thinking it would be amazing if I had eye tracking right now. If I had this EMG wristband to detect every pinch I do perfectly, plus the eye tracking so I can select things by just looking at it, I think this would be a much better product. But of course, I understand that adding eye tracking is going to be significantly impactful for things like cost. So that has to be taken into account. But that doesn't mean that we can't complain about the product as it is today if it isn't ready. I think if you weren't an enthusiast who is used to the limitations of first generation technology, you would not enjoy this kind of current UI and UX. But let's get on to my main problem with the glasses themselves, and that is the monocular problem. So the display that you see in your right eye is great, okay? It is sharp, it is clear, it has minimal distortion, it's bright, it gets up to 5,000 nits, and 600 by 600 sounds like it's not a lot of resolution. But because it's only over such a small space, again, bring your hand out and you can see what kind of space it's over. The angular resolution there is actually great. That's higher angular resolution than Apple Vision Pro. So the display that you see on your right eye, no complaints. It's great, okay, for what it is, for being a little pop-up HUD for things like notifications and messages. The problem is that you see nothing in your left eye, and that sounds kind of obvious. It's a monocular system. But what that meant for me is that it just never felt quite right. My eyes always just felt a little strained when I had the display up, and it just felt wrong. So if you're in the VR world, as many of you will be in our comments, you will be used to running into a bug, or maybe you've used a mod or an early build of a game that a developer is testing with you, where a virtual object or a shader or a UI menu will only render in one eye. And if you've experienced that, you know how much that sucks and how much it just hurts your brain and your eyes. And for me, this felt no different. It felt just as irritating as that. So a lot of people have asked, oh, your mic's still on.
Sorry, you were making me laugh that you have done that. I've done a build of that in here with you, and I still have to work with you afterwards. And I forgive you for it, but I barely.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's PC VR mods that have this as an issue, and in their menus and stuff, and I hate it. I hate it just as much as you do. I apologize for any time I've subjected you to it, but I think both of us in our over 10 years in this industry have seen it a lot of times. I want to be clear, by the way, that this is not unique to Meta. I've tried a bunch of other monocular HUD glasses and prototypes, and they all felt just as bad. Meta's not doing something uniquely wrong here, but I think the monocular problem is fundamental. So a lot of people
Meta's not doing something uniquely wrong here. I want our audience to live with that statement. Go ahead, David.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just saying a lot of people have asked me the question, could you watch a video on this, right? Could you use this to, while you're doing the dishes or doing the gardening or whatever you're doing, have a video up in front of you and watch it in a much more comfortable way than putting a full Quest headset or Apple Vision Pro on? The answer is that technically, yes. This already supports watching videos that people have sent you on Instagram and WhatsApp. So in theory, send yourself the video on WhatsApp and you can do this next week, or the week after next, I should say, if I'm getting the dates right. However, you wouldn't want to, or at least I wouldn't want to. The monocular display is fine for bringing up a message or a notification, for checking directions every so often, right? I can bring up the navigation system. It's not turn by turn. It's just showing you like a little mini map HUD like you would see in the corner of a video game like Grand Theft Auto or something. So if I were to use that, I would find that immensely useful actually, to double tap my middle finger to turn on the display every so often and just check where I am in my route. But I wouldn't want to keep it up the entire time, just like I wouldn't want to keep up a video. So I was quite shocked, maybe is the right word, or surprised by how few other impressions really touched on this. Some of them kind of brushed over it as like a small trade-off. And so that raised the question for me, am I uniquely susceptible to binocular rivalry? Binocular mismatch, I should say, more technically. Is this something where, my eyes are just not liking this, but other people are fine? And so I asked people that had just tried the demo, including my group. I also heard people talk about it separately. And I also asked the attendant. This was not like a Meta technical employee. This was just a event staff who I'm not sure if they worked at Meta in general and they were just pulled in for the day, or they're at a contracted staff. The point is they didn't work on the glasses. They were just trained to take people through these rooms where you had these kind of different objects you could demo. He said, I've heard that all day actually, in regards to the uncomfortable feeling of the display only being in one eye. So he'd heard that all day from the hundreds of people he was demoing to. I think this is probably, to a great degree, personal, right? How much you care about this is going to depend on individual perceptual factors, how much your eye and brain are willing to accept or reject a monocular display. But I would wager that there's no one who is 100% comfortable with it. And look, we know from the reporting of both Bloomberg's Mark Gurman and Ming-Chi Kuo, the supply chain analyst, according to both of these people, Meta plans to only have this thing on the market for 2 years, and then it will replace it in 2027. And I do mean replace, not just bring a new option. Replace it, according to this reporting, with a successor that is binocular. So, all this said, Meta CTO Andrew Bosworth is 100% correct to point out that it's not trivial to make something like this binocular. You more than double the cost of the display system, because you also have to introduce something called disparity correction, which requires changes to the entire design of the device at times. And there are other possible solutions, but they're all costly. The other thing is that that's not the only thing you would have to do. You would then have to increase the size of the battery, because you now have 2 displays, not just one. You may also need to, in certain cases, depending on how you implement that binocular disparity, maybe have a slightly more powerful chipset, but not in all cases. But there's also going to be other, smaller chips you have to implement. You're driving 2 displays. It is not a trivial thing to do. Talking to my sources that are involved in supply chains with LCOS and waveguides, they suggest that if Meta really wanted to make this binocular, you would be talking about a product that's not $800, but at least $1,200, and not 69 grams, but at least 85 grams. So I have to be very clear here that I strongly believe everything I'm saying about the monocular display, but at the same time, I completely understand why it is what it is today with current technology and at the current pace, the current place where the waveguide and LCOS supply chain is. One of the reasons that I think Meta is going to wait 2 years rather than just go straight out of the bag is that by then the supply chain for these LCOS displays and these waveguides will have scaled up, bringing the cost down. So the cost per waveguide and LCOS is lower than it is today. And then eventually you get to a point where it's roughly half, and you can introduce a product that is roughly the same price. Maybe it's a little bit more expensive, right? Maybe you go from 800 to 1,000 in Meta Ray-Ban Display 2. These are just guesses at this point. We're talking 2 years down the line, but it's clear that it is something that they want to do. And so, to kind of conclude here, the principle of this product, I think, is great. I genuinely would find it incredibly useful to be able to quickly view messages, notifications, emails, and navigation directions without having to pull out my phone or scroll along a tiny little smartwatch display. Because again, it's bigger than a smartwatch display, but smaller than your phone display. That's the kind of size of the HUD we're talking about right now. And it's higher resolution than your smartwatch display, but lower resolution than your phone display. So it is a nice midpoint where, if I get an email, I can scroll along my smartwatch and, look down like this, or I can keep walking with this and read it. I don't know actually which exact notifications it mirrors. We'll find that out in the review. I'm just talking more generally here. I also think that the feature translated captions could be very useful. I was able to try non-translated captions, and it's great because it's not just audio. It actually only works for who you're directly looking at. So this is crazy. I'm not 100% sure how they do this. It might be a combination of beamforming microphones and lip reading. But if I am looking at someone and they're speaking, I see subtitles in the fixed HUD for what they're saying. But if someone is also speaking to my right or left, I don't see their words on the subtitles. And again, I tested this. This isn't just Meta saying this. I tested it. It works. There's an option there I saw to translate. They were speaking English, so I didn't use it. But once I get this for review, I'm going to test that. Accessibility wise, that could be incredibly useful, right? The ability to, for people who are hard of hearing, have subtitles for anyone that they're talking to. For traveling, these kind of translations could be great. So I want to be clear, like I am not one of those people who thinks smart glasses are with a display are a bad idea. I really think from trying this, I'm incredibly excited about the future of these HUD glasses even before AR. I'm incredibly hyped for the binocular version of this. I just think that today, the current first generation implementation with one display and a weak processor is very much so a first generation product and is not there as a mass market thing yet. And so the thing that is there, I think, and is actually I have very little complaints about, is the wristband. I am blown away by how well this thing works. There were lots of concerns about, will it not pick up some gestures? We've said before on this show, it needs to be 100% reliable. It is. Every gesture I put at it, it got perfectly. In my time, this is only 2 15-minute sessions, but I was using this thing over and over. I tried to break it. Every time I go to try a new device in this job, I try to break things, right? When I'm trying a headset, to break its tracking system, I do a deep squat, I crawl along the ground, I start doing jumping jacks, I try to break these things, right? With this, I was moving it up and down my wrist. I was trying to say, well, what if I covered my hand here? What if I kind of squeezed my own hand here? Does it affect how my muscles are moving? Will it get it wrong? What if I squeeze my fingers around here? What if I hold one of my fingers with my hand? It just worked. It genuinely just worked. I'm shocked to say, to be honest, because I expected first generation would be a little bit problematic. And so that's why the headline of the article I put out was the flawless wristband for flawed glasses. I think that based on my initial impressions here, once Meta gets to binocular with eye tracking, this is going to be an excellent product and could be an iPod moment. I think this would be the kind of thing that becomes a pillar consumer tech product, the same way that smartwatch pods are, and maybe even getting close to smartphones. But without the binocular display and without the eye tracking, it's not there yet.
Gosh, so many things to talk about here, and I'm gonna talk about the absurdity of binocular everything. Imagine a wristband without a display on your left hand, and imagine an Apple Watch on your right hand, or whatever, a Samsung watch, a Google Pixel, but whatever their brand of watch is, right, on your right hand, but something without a display on the other hand. So display on one hand, no display on the other hand, but similar functionality other than that, right? It's the same underlying thing. You get a nice little vibration over here on the left, a whole bunch of tracking. You get a whole bunch of tracking, a nice little vibration here on the right. Phones. It's absurd to imagine two phones, but there was a time when you had a work phone and a home phone. You had two lines for various reasons. You had one line for your internet and one line for your voice. You had all these reasons to have multiple lines. You bring this back to phones. People are actually carrying around two phones to divorce their work life from their personal life, because now they're walking around with their work phone in their work from home situations. Where I'm going with a lot of this is my ideal scenario would be something like an Apple Watch. But one of the reasons I don't use the Apple Watch is because of its interrelatedness to the phone. The watch can't actually stand on its own entirely. I can go get a cell phone.
Yeah.
I can go do that. But it's still, Apple insists that the text messages, the iMessages, all need to kind of flow between these two devices in an attached way.
Are you sure if you get the LTE model, I'm pretty sure you can use all of that?
I would have to log into my Apple account.
You have to set it up with an iPhone, but if you get an LTE one, you can use it without an iPhone.
So what then I have to do is I have to carefully go into my Apple settings and tell it which devices to address in which conditions and which devices not to address in certain conditions. Meaning, for instance, if I wanted to set up an emergency line for my family so that my family could reach me even though I'm inside VR, I have to set up a chat group with both phones on it so that both phones ring from a family member on those two chat lines. And I have to now set that up on my watch instead of my phone. I don't know that I can do that. I don't know that I can go into the Messages app and set up and type in. I can. It's just extraordinarily difficult. I got to go type in 3 names. I got to set up the chat line. I could do it on the other phone. It's just a huge pain in the butt because I've got to do everything on this interrelated system between a phone and a watch is where I'm going with that. Yes, it's technically capable of doing it on its own, but Apple insists on attaching a lot of that functionality still to the phone today.
Yeah, so I guess this brings to the broader point of what some commenters are bringing up and what you're bringing up is that currently today, just like the Ray-Ban Meta glasses, these things have their own Wi-Fi connection, but they do not have their own cellular connection. So you have to set them up with a phone, and then the phone is leveraged for the connection. Over time, I think Meta very much so wants to be able to sell one of these with built-in LTE or 5G, ideally. Smartwatches prove that it is possible to put a cellular connection into compact devices, but this would be an even bigger challenge and even more compact. One of the things I've thought about here is that I think there's a huge opportunity for the case itself to get more smarts. Today, the charging case for all of these smart glasses from Meta is just a charging case. It's like your AirPods case in that it holds a lot more battery than the glasses themselves, so you can use them for a long time compared to the direct on-device battery life. But I think there's an opportunity for a lot more here. You can imagine putting speakers into them so that when you have your glasses off, you can use it to play music or talk to it like a smart speaker, right? So, for example, if you think about how would this ever replace a phone, just to jump way out there, what happens if you're one of those people who likes to play music while you shower? You know, you're in the bathroom, you take the glasses off because you're not going to keep them in the shower, put them in the case, and then the case becomes a smart speaker, just like a portable Alexa. And you can say, you know, hey, Meta, play this music, and you get into the shower. These are just mundane examples, but all of these little edge cases do matter over time, right? And I think the other thing you do with the case is that it could be the thing that delivers the cellular connection, right? It has a bigger battery. It has the advantage of being this separate device, so you don't have to add extra antennas on here. It could take the cellular connection in and then relay it to your glasses such that you're still dependent on a device, but it's the same case you're bringing around anyway because that's where your glasses go. So I think that's kind of an interesting possibility. There's one comment I want to reply to here because we didn't really explain what the wristband is. And so Arcanian asks the question. I just want to say before this, on this show, we very much so encourage you to ask a question if you don't understand. Lots of people aren't going to be familiar with everything. So even if you think it's a basic question, we're happy to answer. So Arcanian answers, why do you need a wristband at all? The Apple Vision Pro doesn't need one. And that's actually a great question. So Apple Vision Pro continuously runs optical hand tracking using the cameras on board. And so when you have a big headset that has this external battery, or even like a Quest headset, like we're doing right now, it's running continuous computer vision. It has a battery that is many times bigger than the one you can fit into glasses. And so these computer vision algorithms are relatively computationally expensive. It's not a big deal on a headset, and it's trivial on something like PlayStation VR 2 that's drawing power from the socket. But once you start to have the tiny batteries in these glasses, that's a huge deal. If you wanted to run constant optical tracking on the one camera here, to be clear, only one of these is an LED, the other one is a real camera, you would kill the battery life. The battery life of these glasses would be measured in minutes, not hours, okay? And that wouldn't be a very good product. The other thing is, it would only be in range of this one camera. So if your hands are down by your side or on your knee, like I was just talking about earlier, or in your pocket, the camera can't see it. So you would have to actually bring out your hands and start doing all these pinching maneuvers in front of you. You could add more cameras, right? Have a camera pointing down on the side here, but now you're increasing the cost of the glasses. You're still not solving the problem that you're going to kill the battery, right? And you're going to need a more powerful chip anyway. The AR1 in this can't even do hand tracking. So you're going to need a more powerful chip. All of this is to say, this is the magic of EMG. This wristband intercepts it reads the electrical activation of the muscles that drive your finger movements, and from that it can detect your hand movements. And this technique, called surface electromyography, SEMG, uses trivial power, right? It uses almost no electricity. Meta claims that this wristband has 18 hours of battery life. That is orders of magnitude more efficient than optical hand tracking. And it works in the dark. It works if your hand's in the pocket. So that's why you need the wristband. And in fact, as we'll talk about soon, I think, because this is one of the things Ian always brings up, I think a lot of people who own a Quest or an Apple Vision Pro would like to have this wristband, because it means that if you're in complete darkness, your pinches still get registered. If your hand is underneath the table or underneath the bed sheets, if your hand's in your pocket, this gives you 100% reliability in my testing for the pinch of the gaze and pinch interaction system that we believe is going to be the future default of XR, where you look with your eye at the user element, your user interface element you want to click, and then you pinch with your fingers. This is component one of that. Now, these glasses don't have eye tracking, as I said, so you don't get gaze and pinch here. But if you add eye tracking to these glasses, plus this wristband, you get that gaze and pinch. And so that, I think there's a massive opportunity here, and that's why the EMG wristband is important. When it comes to your discussion about like Apple Watch and stuff on one wrist and the other, I think that's really interesting, because I suspect that what will happen over time is that this will get more and more like the Apple Watch, as in they will add more and more features, and then the Apple Watch eventually will get SEMG for when Apple wants to release their glasses. So right now, this watch today doesn't do anything other than SEMG and vibrate. As far as I'm aware, maybe Meta has it secretly there and they haven't told anyone. According to all public knowledge, this does not have a heart rate sensor, so you can't use it as your Fitbit or your Apple Watch for your workouts and such. It does have an IMU, so theoretically it could do step counting, but as far as we're aware, that is not something that is implemented in the current software. But I would suspect that in the next generation, 2 years down the line, you're going to see more and more smartwatch features come to this thing over time. Will a display ever come to it? Probably not, because Meta would argue you can just do the little double tap your middle finger gesture and bring up the time at any time. But I could imagine that for edge cases or when the battery's out, eventually maybe they put a little basic matrix display on it that is just for showing the time and nothing else. We'll have to see how that goes in future.
So going back to some of what I was trying to say, let me go back to explaining why I'm focusing on that. A smartwatch and smart glasses fulfill a lot of the same tasks. They share a lot of the same technologies, a lot of the same ideas. And whether you go and purchase a smartwatch or a pair of glasses could be a real choice for a lot of people. I'm seeing wonderful questions out there like, will all of my iPhone notifications come up on the thing? Think about, for example, an iMessage notification. Perhaps an iMessage notification could come up on your notifications, but the headset or the glasses can't read the notification to you because Apple hasn't allowed that sort of access. That's sort of the issue that I'm trying to bring across when we're talking about the interplay between all these systems and what I need as a user. And I got to go back to this. I have Central Park a few blocks away from me, the most beautiful place imaginable that I can just walk in, and I have to work while walking through Central Park. Right? David turns in a story at a random time. UK time, I mean, like, it's a random time for me, but UK time, it's in the middle of his day. I'm walking through Central Park. The message comes in Slack on a couple phones that I have. One phone with notifications turned on, one phone with notifications turned off. Do I have both phones on me at that particular time? Probably. All right, so I get the notification that David has turned in an article for us to read and put up in front of you for our website. I have to decide, am I going to edit or read his article on the little phone that's right here in my hand? Or is the edit so important and difficult to do? Is my feedback going to take so much time to give him that I need to get to a keyboard in order to reply to him? That's the decision I'm making while looking at a phone, usually today. I don't necessarily need, like, I'm also doing the editing usually on my phone. I'm doing the reading on my phone. Like, none of those things make sense. But ideally speaking, if I've got a VR headset in my bag and I've got AirPods in my ears and I've got a watch on my wrist and I don't even have a phone, right, anymore. And suddenly the Slack app notifies me that David has turned in an article to edit for our website. And I go, oh, I press a button on my watch, say, okay, I'll read it in 5 minutes. Boom. And so you get an instant feedback that I will be on your article really quickly. And then I go find a chair to park at in Central Park and I put my VR headset out and there's our website. I edit your article for 30, for 5 minutes. I give you some feedback in this window. Maybe I speak it, dictate it, and then I put my headset on and I'm back out on my day. I could pull out a laptop and do that too, right? I could walk home and do that at my home station. I'm not going to be doing that on display glasses, right? And I'm trying to walk through this real life scenario with people of how work gets done, right?
Sure. So I think what you're currently doing with your smartwatch, you could do with the display glasses, the HUD glasses, let's just say, to keep it clear what we're talking about here. You could get the notification and without having to look down, you could replace both the smartwatch and the AirPods in that scenario with just wearing the glasses. You would still have to have your phone for the LTE connectivity, but you wouldn't have to take your phone out of your pocket. Now, the question is, would you be able to read the article on it? Today, no, because there's no Slack app here and there's no SDK for making an app like that. And also, I'd argue you wouldn't want to read a whole article on the monocular display. But I think you only need 2 steps, which is binocular plus a Slack app, to be able to then walk along and not have to go and sit down anywhere and still read. Now, that's not editing yet. That's not sending feedback. But I think you do get to that point where a lot of the pre-typing gets done. And then we just have to find out over time, how practical is it to swipe out those letters on your leg, for example, once they ship this. So just let's talk about, because you brought it up, and it's a good time to kind of finish this section by bringing it up of what you can do on these glasses so far, as well as notifications. So you can set up phone notifications, but you're right in saying that as far as we're aware, iMessage would be blocked, as in you would be able to see that you have an iMessage but not read it. What you do get is WhatsApp and Messenger. You can make and receive phone calls, again, via your phone as a relay. You have an Instagram app, you have camera, music, photos, captions, and then you scroll down to get the other apps, which are, the other apps include Hypertrail, which is just like a little game you can play, as well as Maps, being one of the main ones. The Maps one, I think, is one of the most useful for me. So, yeah, I really want to try this navigating. I did, obviously, in my demo, bring up navigation and say, navigate to Starbucks, and it came up as a HUD. It looks what you expect. It looks like what you see in the corner of Grand Theft Auto, except it's in one eye in your field of view. I find that very useful. But I think in terms of like the practicality here and sending and receiving messages, that's something we can't really test in one of these tests, because it's not my phone that this glass is paired to, right? It's some random meta event staffer.
Yeah, there's another scenario at the end of this where, like, David and I could technically, if we wanted to, do a WhatsApp call, video to video, Ray-Ban glasses to Ray-Ban glasses across 2 continents. Except there's been no scenarios where that makes sense for us to do. And I don't, and in addition to that issue, then the moment you try to do that, you start encountering all the problems. You start encountering exactly why Meta is testing this out at such a rapid pace. They're trying to, figure out how much compression do they have to actually apply to a cell phone streaming video as it's bicycling across a city, or as a person as they're running, right? How much compression and latency, and how do I stream all these things up so that they work right? Well, like, these are all hypothetical scenarios, and I'm talking about real life scenarios that are hit by real roadblocks today that are like devastating to me, right? Like and I don't know that will people be doing constant video calling on this thing when it has the hardware limitations you described?
So on this thing as a Gen 1, I wouldn't want to do video calling because of the monocular problem. I wouldn't want to look at a video stream for a very long time. Personally, again, I will be very curious to see what do others think of this. If you're in the US, from September 30th, you can walk into stores and try this. Please, when you do, come to our comments on uploadvr.com or under this video or whatever and tell us. We really want to know what you think about the monocular aspect here, so please do. But I personally wouldn't want to do this. But if this was binocular, I would. If this was binocular, I would absolutely, if someone wanted to come in and quickly video call me while I was out on the go, say I was on a walk in the park or, whatever I'm at in my day and they need to video call me, sure. I wouldn't want to hold my phone up and stare down at them like this. I just want to take it like this.
Have you seen people walking with very careful walks with steadied hands, and they've really got their look down as they're walking and doing the selfie cam? They've stabilized their arm. It's pretty phenomenal social behavior.
Yeah, let's go through the comments now before we move on here, because there's a lot of questions people have, and I'll try to answer as many of them as I can here. So Chester is bringing up the WhatsApp issue that we always bring up, where if you're in the United States, the default is probably iMessage, and you have this whole blue bubble, green bubble thing. But of course, in the rest of the United States, in the rest of the planet, WhatsApp is the default messaging system. So this is obviously going to be more appealing there. Meta does plan to bring these glasses to the UK, Canada, France, and Italy in early 2026. You may be wondering why those countries. The UK and Canada, obviously, it's the English, same language. It makes the internationalization a lot easier. French and Italy is because EssilorLuxottica, the owner of Ray-Ban Oakley, is a French-Italian company. And so you can make the obvious conclusion there. Diedrich Reed is saying, I'm shocked that a product with overwhelmingly good community reviews is getting such biasly negative critique coming from you. I'm not hearing any excitement for what should be a watershed moment. So yeah, I want to directly address that comment because I think it's one I've heard from a few people. So firstly, I want to touch on that word, community reviews. Firstly, nobody has reviewed this. They have done what's called a hands-on preview. A review is what someone does after they've used it for dozens of hours in their daily life at home. A hands-on preview is what you do after you use it for 20 minutes in a controlled demo environment with meta handlers 5 meters or 2 meters away from you. So that's what you've heard so far. Secondly, the word community reviews. Community is not really the right word here. Anyone who's tried this is someone who was invited to Meta Connect so these aren't random people walking into a shop and trying them quite yet. So wait for that. Then you say biasly negative critique. So we don't have any bias. As I've said many times on this show, I am very, very excited for smart glasses with a HUD. I've actually said very clearly, I think they're going to be a pillar of consumer technology. I think these things are going to be more popular than smartwatches once you can get to binocular and eye tracking in these things. So I do think these are incredibly exciting product. And I also said that I think the wristband works so well, it feels like magic. So if I'm biased against Meta or whatever, which is a new accusation, I guess, why would I call their wristband flawless? The reality here is I'm giving you my genuine, honest view that's unfiltered. And I'm not going to make any accusations, but I think your accusation of bias or any kind of deception here is actually misplaced, and it's the opposite direction. And I think you'll see that once people actually in the real world start to try these glasses and see what they're like.
Can I speak to that too at some point?
Yeah, sure. Let me just finish and then you can go ahead. You're saying I'm not hearing any excitement for what should be a watershed moment. It is a very interesting moment, but it's a first generation product. Again, the first iPhone didn't have 3G. It sucked when you weren't on Wi-Fi. It didn't have video recording. You couldn't record a video. And I'm not even talking about the selfie camera. It didn't even have a selfie camera. It was a first generation product. The first iPad, I tried it. It was so slow to load a web page. You would go to load the BBC News or the New York Times and you'd be waiting 10 to 20 seconds or something like that until the page finished to load. I think there's a lot of potential here, but it's a very early first generation product. And if you want to put your fingers in your ears and pretend it's perfect, you're going to be disappointed when you get the thing in your hands, is all I'm going to tell you.
I love that. You will see people protecting their access. There's only so many companies in this space producing hardware and software of note. And if you don't protect your access to that source of information, you could be facing an uphill battle that is too high for you to climb if you're an influencer. we're journalists, and I don't care about access. We will cover the news whether we receive the access or not. And I've worked with David here for over half a decade now, and we're 100% aligned, I think, on this very specific subject of it doesn't matter whether we are locked out. We're going to give you our impressions, and we're going to do it with the context of literally months of our lives having been spent with head-mounted displays in front of our eyeballs. I like Shalaska's comment here. David, you absolute, how can you be such a negative on Meta? Now take the Meta headset off your head right now.
Yeah.
Like you're in a Meta headset right now while talking real talk about Meta's next glasses. Also, I'm just going to throw this out there for the longtime viewers, maybe the OG fans, people like Guy Godin, right? Like that have experienced good HMDs, right? Has experienced OLED, right? And then went through 3 generations of Quest headsets without them being shipped as this lowest common denominator thing. Millions of people all experiencing VR without the best of darkness possible, right? And we get shipped these things that have all these sacrifices that Meta had to make for some choice in Meta's favor, right? Like they made this choice for them, not necessarily for us. And we can feel that. Like it gets a lot of people into VR, but do they spend time? Because they don't have darkness, right? Like those are real questions that we ask over the course of weeks and weeks at this. And David is describing the display glasses equivalent of this.
Yeah, I want to point out that we got a lot of this when we reviewed Quest Pro. People were saying, why are you being so negative? And look what happened to that, right? Like the other thing was this industry has hyped unready products so many times that have then flopped. Oculus Go, people were saying, it's time for mainstream VR. It's $200. It's ready to go. And, I mean, I and others were pointing out that, this is a very limited product that is first generation. If I were, an Oculus Go potential buyer back then, I would have waited for Oculus Quest, right? In the same sense that it's not quite ready there. And maybe you liked Go, but look at its failure. The guy who led the project at Facebook at the time has come out and said that the damn thing flopped. Same thing with Quest Pro. It's a joke now, right? Meta was giving a presentation at GDC and they were talking about all their headsets and they were talking, and Quest 2 did this and Quest 1 did this. And then we released Quest Pro. Let's move on. They literally said that exact joke on stage. So I just think, someone's saying nobody's expecting a first generation product to be flawless. I think a lot of the people keep calling reviews. I'm going to keep saying again, I'm so sorry to push back on this. Nobody has reviewed this product. Spending 20 minutes at Meta headquarters in a room with Meta handlers who are guiding you through a pre-made demo is not a review. Okay, that's not a review. A review is using it for dozens of hours in your real life and then talking about how it is.
And we have to talk about the flow there, right? I did a demo of the Apple Vision Pro that was a handled demo like that, right? It was exactly what David just described. And we described it as such in the demo, right? Like I'm with Meta handlers. We're being walked through. I'm making comments back and forth to them. David 100% did the exact same thing with his write-up of the display glasses, walking you through the conditions of the demo. And someone in our comments brought up the immersed demo that we wrote about. You go back and look at our immersed demos, right? We're giving you all the same stuff every time, right? We're giving you all the background conditions of all this stuff, and you go look at other things. They're not giving you that. They're not giving you all of this context, and they're rushing to the word review because YouTube rewards and Google rewards searchers who need those reviews before making their purchases. And we have to go back. We're giving you a hands-on. It's controlled. We're laying all of that out every single time we do one of these things, so that we're planning to actually accept this thing into our life later. If you want a real deep review after dozens of hours of this living in our life, you're not going to get it yet. You're going to have to wait. We're sorry that no one has given access to it, but maybe actually use it as like help that guide your spending, right? If there are no reviews out, authentic, real reviews with dozens of hours, hold on to your wallet a little bit longer, clutch onto your money just a little bit tighter, That's all we're saying over the length of this, right?
Yeah, I mean, it pains me somewhat that a lot of the world seem to have forgotten what the word review means. It's really, I'm sorry to keep harping on about this, but there is, as Onakazi is pointing out, hands-on impressions not equal to review. These are fundamentally different things. And I'm sure some people in these comments have bought a product based on hyped impressions and then put it into their life, realized it wasn't quite what they thought it was, and it sat in their drawer or got sold on eBay. I'm not saying that that's this. I'm just saying that, like, this is not it's not even the iPhone moment, right? This is the first ever Meta glasses with a display. We're going to look back on this as a very early primitive first generation product. It's still using the same chip from 2 years ago. There are a lot of limitations here that you need to note. And Chester's asking an interesting question, coming back to this idea of fundamental questions of if it had two displays, it was binocular, what does that mean? Does it mean you can do more on it, or do you just still see one screen? If this had two displays, you as the viewer would still see one, okay? It would just be 3D and it would be in both eyes. It's hard, if you have never seen an image only in one eye, it's very difficult to actually analogize. There's no scenario in the real world where you would see an image that is optically focused beyond, your nose, that in only one eye. If you don't use VR and you haven't experienced it, you maybe don't even know, like, what does that even feel like? There's no scenario in nature that I can think of where in our first, couple of 100,000 years as a species, we would ever even encounter this. So I can't give you an analogy if you haven't tried it. I can only tell you that it looks strange and it feels wrong to only see something in one eye. But if it had two eyes, you wouldn't get that. It would be comfortable to look at. You wouldn't get this feeling of eye strain.
I love it. You're describing it so carefully. And it's also, yeah, I mean, like, I can imagine it, right? Even now, I'm trying to watch a movie in one eye. Am I closing my eye to make it more visible, right? Like, am I suddenly just an eye patch person because I want to watch in one eye so often? I don't know. It just,
yeah. I mean, look, I wonder what, I see Actual saying that calling this my bias critique. What is my supposed bias supposed to be here as someone who's, probably been more excited about smart glasses than Ian for years and years, that is very much so saying that I literally think this is going to be almost as popular as smartphones in the next 5 to 10 years, and one of the most popular I think it's going to be a pillar of consumer technology, and yet I'm biased against it. I don't know.
I think what happens.
1 second, sorry, just to address this. I think some people are a little bit disappointed that they have this idea that today in 2025 we're going to get to this certain place, and some people are kind of reacting a little bit emotionally to the fact that we're not there. And I wish we were. I wish I could send you in a time machine 2 years into the future, and you could get the next generation. I just think that that's not where we are today, and I'm going to repeat it again. It's not. I'm not saying, oh, Meta, you've made some big mistake. It's okay. It's a first generation product. I agree with them putting it out on the market. It's just it's not ready for a mass market use case yet. That's okay though. So are lots of first generation products.
I think they probably know that. One of the things that I've been waiting to see here is what is the flow once you actually go to buy this thing in stores. I have a feeling they're just going to be overflowing with units of styles for you to pick from every other line of the glasses, the Gen 2s, the Oakleys, you're going to find those, I think, everywhere you look. The thing is, I'm wondering how hard it's going to be to order these, what kind of delay we're going to see, because ultimately I think I'm taking away from your hands-on, David, that this is a dev kit of display interface, of a display UI, and this wrist-based interface. And our audience, I want two of them. I
maybe want not dev kit.
VR.
Yeah, let's get on. We'll finish up this session by talking about the potential use case of the wristband. But I don't think it's a dev kit. I do think it's an early adopter product. As I mentioned earlier, to get to the point where you can put two of these in glasses at roughly the same cost as one, you need to scale up the supply chain, right? These waveguides and LCOS displays are used in a very limited number of products at the moment. There is no mass market product that uses a waveguide today. This will probably be the biggest scale. There are some military things that use it. Obviously, dev kits like Snap Spectacles, Microsoft HoloLens, and Magic Leap 1 used it. But there are some, other HUD glasses in China, for example. But there's nothing that's selling at the scale of millions of people that has a waveguide and LCOS display in it. There are LCOS in certain projectors, but these are slightly different, the type they're put into smart glasses. And so a big part of this is the same reason why a lot of people would argue that Apple is putting out the iPhone Air this year. It's cool to have a really slim phone, and that's part of it. But if you look at the reports from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman, the iPhone Fold coming next year is basically going to be two iPhone Airs stuck together. Obviously, that's a massive simplification, but from a supply chain component perspective, underneath the foldable display, the components are going to be very, very similar to just having two iPhone Airs. And so for Apple, the part of the reason that the iPhone Air exists is to scale up the supply chain for these kinds of components to be ready for iPhone Fold next year. And I think for Meta, a huge part of this is about scaling up the supply chain for waveguides so that it can not only be used for binocular HUD glasses, but for eventually AR glasses. You can't really just go from zero to mass market supply chain for anything in one big file swoop. You have to go slowly up over time. And I think that's definitely a huge part of what's going on here. And I love Shal Alaska's comments that accusing the people of wearing a Quest 3 using in a Meta avatar of bias against Meta is silly. Yeah, I mean, that is silly.
I like Pastel's comment of, as an early tech adopter, this has made me more excited to get these glasses, not less. I like being informed. And that is exactly the type of person we are speaking to. So thank you, Pastel. Yeah. Thank you for being a member. And thank you for understanding why we do what we do and why we talk so much about this in such deep ways. I want to talk about micro gestures at some point, but go ahead.
Yeah,
David.
sure. I just want to say that, like, I think a lot of people are going to really like this product. Like, if you're an early adopter, but you need to be an early adopter.
Scopo will probably like it, right?
Sorry?
I think Scopo will like it. It's just Google Glass. It's Google Glass, but good is how I would have described it.
It's Google Glass, but doesn't make you look like a cyborg. Is okay. And also the EMG wristband, right? Which we'll talk a bit more now. We've talked a lot about the glasses. I think if you're an early adopter who is very aware of the issues and limitations here, then you absolutely, I'm sure you might love it. But the purpose of telling you all this is not because we have some random hatred for Meta. Come on, we're about to talk later about how great we think Hyperscapes is and all of this stuff. It's because we think you should be informed about the advantages and the disadvantages and know what you're buying before you get it.
You've got a limited amount of money.
Yeah, we are not hypefluencers. We're not going to sit here and do the thing where we smile at the camera and go, everything's great, and repeat the talking points that Meta has provided. We're not going to do that. If you want that, go and watch someone who does that. We're not going to do that ever. We're going to give you our actual impressions that we actually think with no bias or kind of or preconception.
We try to work to remove our bias from one another, quite literally. I mean,
I think the irony here is that people are so used to now, we're in 2025, like the hypefluencer being the default, that anyone who isn't seems like slightly strange. Whereas 10 years ago, it was the opposite. Like we've just moved so far into a world where what people think of as tech reviews now is someone trying something for 10 minutes and flashing all the talking points from the company who gave it. And
you've made a big assumption that person knows what they're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. And just saying like and subscribe, guys, for the next bunch of bullet points from the company next video. If you want that, sure. For me, that's background noise. That's not a real tech impression or analysis.
Earl is talking my language now. How do these communicate? Is it digital SIM and or Wi-Fi? Is it Wi-Fi and Bluetooth? What are?
Yes, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. It still leverages your phone for internet connection if you're not on Wi-Fi. They will connect to Wi-Fi themselves and be able to do some onboard functionality like Meta AI. But if you want to use them out in the world without Wi-Fi, it needs to go via your phone.
Chrome, we now have a generation who doesn't understand the difference between hypefluencer and actual honest discussion. Welcome to this. I feel like we've just unearthed a whole layer of the internet for our discussions to talk about in the future. So we cherish the audience that we have. I saw it early in our discussion. The people who get here early and because they know that we're going to be late because we're doing something either technically or writing for the website. And so we've got enough of an audience here, enough of a community here that you folks are okay waiting around for us to appear for sometimes an hour. And we're sorry that sometimes that happens, but it's kind of cool to arrive in here and I've already seen an hour long, very healthy discussion about the VR. it. And we didn't cut anyone out of the discussion. They just kept it nice and civil. It's wonderful.
I really love some of the conversations here going on. I think there's a lot of great discussion going on here. I'm so happy about what our audience is and our discussion is compared to the comment sections of the Hypefluencers. So please keep that going. Quinton asked a question. So the message on this is only WhatsApp. I can't just send a text from these. I'm an American and WhatsApp is new and scary. So my understanding, and we'll need to try this out in the real world. I don't use an iPhone, but I will, of course, pair it to a friend's iPhone to figure out the answer here. My understanding is that you can send a regular text message that would go through SMS. And I think probably RCS as well, the new kind of open standard for more rich messaging than just SMS. And I think it also works on Android messages because it does RCS. I think the one thing that you can't do, and of course as well, yes, you can do WhatsApp and Messenger. I think the one thing you cannot do is iMessage, Apple's iMessage. And that's not because Meta doesn't want to, it's because Apple does not allow other devices to interact with iMessage in that way. So do we want to talk a little about the band now? And we've talked about it before, but I think you want to talk about your desire and my desire as well, that this is usable on more than just these glasses.
Yeah, so our comments are, Arlen is out there. Super fan Arlen, thank you for tuning in. And a super fan of this product. Arlen has even sent us some game design ideas that are really phenomenal. And you're the game designer in all of our hearts out there, Arlen, right? We're all a little bit of a game designer, I think, at some level. It's just we're waiting for the tools to make them possible. David, you're going to talk about those tools later with Arlen because he's been in our comments talking about an engine to build virtual worlds. And it sounds like Meta actually did that. But Arlen is in there saying, I want this to work with VR. I want this to work with Quest. And I expect it to work with Quest. I just think that the bigger surface area for Meta to win, the idea that Zuckerberg wants to make a statement about is the replacement for the cell phone, and that's some combination of glasses and wristband. Well, I want to take two of these. So people earlier were commenting, or were joking about this, but I want four of these. I'm going to end up I think I'm going to end up owning four of these bands. Two are going to sit on chargers, and then I'm going to take them off and then put the two that I'm wearing on chargers, take the two that are on the chargers and put them on. And I'll be able to wear them 24/7 if I do it that way. And the scenarios David was talking about, right? Last night, I'm in bed watching Mad Max in 3D on a beautiful OLED screen. The screen is about here to here, right here. And it's in 3D, a Mad Max Fury Road, looks wonderful. Over here, I have Demio on a flat screen. Playing Demio and getting my butt kicked on the first level of Demio. And I'm using eye-tracked pinches to interact with my interface. I've got Blue Sky over here and a couple other apps that I'm messing around with. But I'm just enjoying this 3D movie. And I'm enjoying Demio, and I'm slowly getting sleepy, right? This is my bedtime routine now, and I'm slowly getting tired. And so my hands go below the covers, and I pull the blankets up. And before this, it's complete darkness in my room, and the headset has been showing me this little ghostly white hand, so I can still see my hand tracking. It basically shows me when the headset can see my hands only now, which is really kind of fantastic because now it's like I don't have to do any missed pinches. I can just reach my hand up in front of me. Now I know the headset has seen my hand, and I can reach around and start interacting with things. But that's my point. I'm getting tired. My hands go below the covers. Now these wristbands actually keep me in VR. I don't have to take my hand up above to interact with the interface again. And I go to sleep with these wristbands on, and they actually track my sleep as well. That's the dream right here. That's the end goal.
Yeah. So that is a very good example of how this could be useful for headsets as well as glasses. So there's kind of three advantages I think you would get there. And I want to be clear, Meta is currently not selling this band independently. I asked, will it work with Quest? Will they sell it independently? And they give me the classic nothing to share on that response. But it's something that we would expect them to at some point do, because you do get those three advantages. One being that you can now do the pinch of gaze and pinch even when your hands are out of view of the headset. So as Ian said, you could be in bed with your hands under the covers. You could have your hand under a desk. You could be in such darkness that your hand isn't visible from even the IR illuminators in front of the Quest 3S because they don't go down to the side. That's one of the advantages, right? You get pinch interactions and other hand gestures even when the camera cannot actually see your hands. Advantage number 2 is haptics. So these do have haptics. Right now, what they're used to do is just tell you that a gesture was recognized. So, I do my pinch or my double pinch or whatever, and these do a little vibration. But of course, in VR, you could use this for much, much more. One of the biggest limitations of hand tracking today is that you don't get haptics of any kind. You can do self haptics, but if you're, grabbing something or touching something or punching some virtual enemy, you don't get haptics. And the wrist haptics could be great because of this phenomenon called sensory substitution, which we've talked about before, wherein if your brain gets a visual and haptic stimuli together, you can actually associate them. So if you poke a virtual button with your finger with hand tracking and your wrist vibrates at the exact same time that you touch that button, a lot of research shows that your brain will actually think that the haptic is on your finger. So it will somewhat feel like you're really pressing a button. I've tried this and it actually is a real thing. It's hard to describe because it is such like a mental thing. You know that the vibration is coming from your wrist on like a conscious level, but there's something about your subconscious that kind of just says, I've just pressed something and it's given me haptic feedback. It's another one of those things that I think people will have to try to understand. But the use of wristbands to give hand tracking haptics is a massive potential use case for VR, because then you do get something that's between completely hand-free optical tracking with nothing on your wrist and full-on controllers. And I think that could be very, very appealing. The use case Ian often talks about is that, in Apple Vision Pro today, in their home space, if you high-five a spatial persona, you get like an effect. And there are some other VR apps that do this, right? But what if just as you high-five someone, you also got the haptic vibration on your wrist? So massive potential use case for VR.
It goes from never high-fiving to high-fiving 5 times in a row fast when you feel that, right? Like it's wild to just flip that switch of just how fantastic VR feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point that you bring up. Sensory substitution is really, really interesting. And I think there are people that are skeptical about it, but give it a try. Your brain can be tricked more easily than you may think it can. And then, so number 3 application that would be useful if the wristband does come to Quest headsets eventually would be to improve hand tracking when you are doing fast motions and wide motions. So already the hand tracking is pretty good at fast and wide motions, okay? But if you wanted to make it even more reliable and even lower latency, you can leverage the IMU in this thing. The IMU, for people unfamiliar, it's a little tiny chip that has an accelerometer and gyroscope. It's what's in pretty much every tech device today for all kinds of reasons. For VR controllers, they're actually used as the primary tracking system, and the optical tracking, the LEDs under the controller, are kind of just used to drift correct the IMUs. A lot of people don't know that. It's not, you do need the LEDs. They're absolutely vital because the IMU itself will drift off into infinity because for obscure reasons, essentially you have to integrate twice, right? You get acceleration and you have to integrate that to get to velocity and then integrate that again to get to distance. And then the tiniest bit of loss of inaccuracy there in the acceleration, the most minuscule, will get magnified in that double integration process. For anyone wondering why that is. So the optical tracking system is actually just there for drift correction. The primary reason that your VR headset and hand controller tracking is really, really fast and low latency is the IMU. So combining that with hand tracking, fusing it would be great. There's a company that does this today, and it's HTC. They have a Vive wrist tracker. You may not even know it exists. I don't know if we can find an image of it in our archives. Maybe we can. But they do this already on the Vive Focus headsets. If you add this on, I think it's $130 per wristband, but it does allow you to get improved hand tracking. And I doubt we can find an image of it, but you can understand. Those are the 3 advantages of adding a wristband with the MG to Quest. Oh,
and
I found it.
2 of them again. Okay, so let me give this specific example again, where you're playing catch with a family member who isn't there with you, right? You want to play catch with a dad who is in another state. You can do it this way. You get a wristband on here, a wristband on here, a wristband on each hand, and the ball comes in, you're watching it come in, and you misjudged how far it's going to go, and it's back here actually, right? Is when it's going to catch it. Your head's over here. See what my hand tracking is doing? It's going absolutely bonkers here, with just a little bit of head movement to make this not work. Then in this hand, you're going to throw the ball, and I'm doing this reversed because I'm actually left and right-handed, or I've reversed this. But your ball comes in here, you grab it here, and then you throw it here. At the most critical times of these interactions, the most critical times that what you're doing be accurate and right, it fails. It fails at the catch. It fails at the throw. The tracking has to pick up and estimate and guess. Oh, crap, his hand is moving this fast at the first moment I saw it, and it's moving this much between these two frames the very first second I saw it. Therefore, we're going to let this ball that's being thrown over there actually go and go into the glove of the other person. All of this is wizardry, fakery that genius developers across the world have figured out how to make you not notice. It's brilliant. 11 Table Tennis, the work they've done is phenomenal to make table tennis as great as it is. But I'm talking about things that will sell headsets for the rest of this century, right? Like this game of catch, right? And so not only do you need the tracking to fill in those gaps, you also need to have a haptic effect the moment that your glove gets the ball, right? And you need to get that haptic effect at the exact right moment that the ball would have hit this thing that is out of view. And then without even looking at it potentially, right? You're grabbing the ball to throw it at the other person. This is what you see. This is what we admire baseball players for, professional sports athletes for doing. And we're incapable of doing it in VR because of these limitations.
Yeah, absolutely. Very much so. I am very excited about when we say when, it's not confirmed, we're guessing when they do make this available for Quest headsets. As Ian points out, you would be able to have so much more robust hand tracking for all these kinds of use cases. Yeah. So let's move on to our next topic. We've talked a lot about about Meta Ray-Ban display and the Meta Neural Band. We've talked about all the things that are amazing, all the things that are still very limited in the first generation. I think we have a very nuanced take, and I think most people appreciate that. But we're now going to talk about some more topics because we could talk about that forever, and I'm sure we will talk about it for months on end as we, see more news come out about it, as we get the product in December. Once that finger tracing ships, there'll be a lot more to talk about. But we do have more of this show to get through, and there are some other interesting topics, and we want to get to our virtual reality topics as well quite soon. So the next topic for smart glasses is Wearables Device Access Toolkit. This is the SDK that we had expected Meta to announce for its glasses, but there are some very important limitations to note about this SDK. So to be clear, this is an SDK for iPhone and Android phone apps. And what it allows them to do is leverage the camera, speakers, and microphone of the connected Ray-Ban Meta or Oakley Meta glasses in their apps. And from that, you can kind of create a app per se, even though it's not running on the glasses. It comes back to what we were talking about before about the difference between the onboard compute and leveraging a phone. So an example of what you could build here is you could, at the most basic level, have a custom AI running instead of Meta AI, right? So you just open up a continuous audio stream to the speakers and from the microphone, and now you can reroute all of the user's voice commands to ChatGPT or Gemini, right? That's the most basic possible use case. But companies can also use this for more custom integrations that leverage AI for their own apps. For example, there is a golf app startup that is using them to allow you to say the name of their startup, like, hey, startup name, and then what club should I pick right now, given where that hole is over there? Or, what's the fairway run here? And all these kind of golf questions. And another interesting experiment we are seeing was from Disney, where Disney's Imagineering team built a kind of prototype of a park guide. So you can go and watch the video of this on uploadvr.com where we've clipped it out. But they're able to walk around the park and say, what's this ride? Or where can I get a gluten-free snack nearby? And then they also have a proactive component to it where it will say, hey, that ride that you were looking at earlier but had too long a queue, it's available now. Another example is in this, she looks at someone's toy or merch or whatever it is and says, where can I get one of those for myself? So these are custom integrations where Disney is running their own AI, to be clear. They're leveraging ChatGPT or Gemini or something like that and doing their own custom tuning on top of it to build out an app. And so there are two big limitations here in this SDK that we need to make very clear. One is that it does not support the display of the Meta Ray-Ban display in any way. It cannot send imagery to the display. That is a huge limitation. Meta says it's starting to think about how that might work, but that's not going to be part of it. The other limitation is that it doesn't support Meta AI. So you can't say, hey, Meta, and then a custom command. That's what we expected this to work like, but that's actually not what it works like. A developer has to actually start a continuous audio stream and do that handling themselves. And so that means that the developer is going to be paying the cost of the AI, be it OpenAI or Gemini credits or whatever AI service they want to use. So this Wearables device access toolkit is coming in early access soon, in the coming month. It's not actually out yet. It's coming very soon. But at the initial start, it will have those major limitations. It is only about accessing the camera, speakers, and microphones of the glasses. But there are still some interesting use cases there. And I recommend going and watching the little clips we clipped of how the golf developer and Disney are using these.
My headset's a little glitchy. I might have to pop out and come back in here in a little bit. Do we want to move on to this conversation focus story? That's the next one, right?
Yeah, I just want to see if we have a comment to answer. Steve Barr is asking whether it can get data from the wristband. No, it cannot. This is mostly meant for the displayless glasses. A lot of people associate this with, it's an SDK for the display glasses. Keep in mind that Meta intends to still be selling at least an order of magnitude more glasses without a display than those with the display for quite a long time. So this is their primary focus. This is about mainly letting people develop apps for the regular Ray-Ban Meta and Oakley Meta glasses. Let's see if there's anyone else asking a question. Yeah, I don't think we have any questions about this one, so we can move on to the next topic. We'll just wait for Ian to rejoin because he followed this up. If anyone has any questions about anything, this would be a good time while we're waiting for Ian to rejoin. But until he does, I'll just introduce what this next topic is. So all of the Meta smart glasses are getting a feature called Conversation Focus. And it's a seemingly primarily accessibility feature that will boost the voice of the person in front of you using the directional microphone array. So there are 5 different microphones actually on Ray-Ban Meta glasses. As I always say, which is deep irony about saying that I'm biased against Meta glasses, I use my Ray-Ban Meta glasses for every single phone call I ever take because the microphone is so great and so are the speakers, despite being completely open ear. So I can put on a pair of glasses and walk around and take a phone call without having anything touching or covering my ear and knowing that the other person is getting a really, really high quality microphone experience from me. So one of the things they're using this 5 microphone array for in this upcoming feature, Conversation Focus, is to be able to boost the voice of the person in front of you by just kind of magnifying it, replaying it in the same way that a hearing aid might, except without the need to have anything touching your ear. So interesting accessibility feature. I'm really curious to see how the latency is on this because that's going to be the big decider of whether this is useful or not. The key thing about any kind of hearing aid is that it has to be incredibly low latency. You don't want an echo of what the person in front of you is saying. You want it to feel like it is just another part of that same volume. So really, we will be curious to try out Conversation Focus and see how well it works.
Yep. I was trying to decide whether to, I guess, Kyle, if you're still out there in the audience, David, now is a good time to ask about this. Do we care about analyzing the AirPods Pro and its translation feature as an aspect of augmentation related to what we do, right? Like, because it's so different than our normal area, but it's the same
Yeah.
that we're discussing here.
Yeah, it does get into an interesting question of where do you draw the line of these kind of products. I think for us, we focus on head-mounted stuff. You could say AirPods are head-mounted. We focus on, as some people joke, facial computing, right? Face computers, things that go in front of your eyes and with or without a display. In many cases, we just are following the displayless ones because over time they evolve into and are the foundation of the display ones. And so I think because the AirPods aren't evolving into display or AR stuff themselves, that kind of goes outside our scope. But it is interesting that, as you point out, Meta is very much so encroaching on some of the use cases of AirPods here. These are features that AirPods also offer now. The AirPods Pro offer a hearing aid system. They also both offer live translation, right? AirPods Pro and Ray-Ban Meta can translate the voice of the person in front of you into your own language. And so there's definitely some overlap there. For me, I would want to have my ears open rather than my ears closed, but that's going to be personal preference. I think what's interesting about this topic also is that years ago, Ian, you went and actually kind of did a kind of hands-on discussion with these research.
Yeah, they did some cool demos of just audio perception. It was clear that that whole demo sort of closed with, where are you putting these products, right? Like, and it was clear that it was meant for something like this, right? It's rather eye-opening, ear-opening to hear the difference between the types of things we hear normally through our computer systems and then just reproductions of that. So, for example, one of these demos was a live recording and then playing back that live recording as if it had just happened. And so, like, you've got these headphones over your ears, or something that looks very much like these, and you have to identify with your eyes closed where these sounds are coming from and whether the sounds are actually being made right in front of you or they're being reproduced by the things in your ears. It's a phenomenal technology to just to think about augmentation in these terms. I think you and I disagree about this all. I am going to say they're head mounted, and I'm going to be on the other side of this, of just ear based augmentation is something people are so used to already, and the it's gonna change a lot of people's lives, this technology, as it gets better, but we have to see it roll out one step at a time. And I can't wait to see how the glasses feature works. I'm going to be interested to try out the translation feature at some point, at least on the AirPods.
Yeah, I've tried the translation feature on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses actually, and I see Clayman saying that one thing that's impressive about the AirPods translation is that they only translate the person you're looking at, so that people beside you it doesn't. That's actually also the case for the Ray-Ban Meta, and it actually, in theory, should even be better because you have these more distributed 5 microphone arrays, and you can do this directional processing, and that is some of the research here. So I tested exactly that. I actually did test Spanish to English, and the person in front of me was speaking Spanish, and I heard what they were saying in my ear in English, even though there was someone off to the side speaking as well. It didn't interfere with it in any way. So again, I also tried that with the display glasses at Connect, but not translation, just captioning. And we tried this specifically, genuinely specifically. We had someone talk quite loudly to my right, and their captions did not come up, only the person that I was looking at. So
what Clay is saying is they're suggesting that the AirPods translation feature will take into account who you're looking at.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying both of them do. Both the Ray-Ban Meta and the AirPods are able to do it. But I'm saying, in theory, at least, the Ray-Ban Meta should be better because instead of only having either 2 or 4 mics, it's a 5 microphone array distributed over a larger area, so you get a better sense of spatial separation.
I think it's fascinating to think about I get you sometimes talk about bottom up versus top down, and I don't actually understand when we say that this is a bottom up problem or top. What are you saying there? But it's funny to have Apple arrive at the solution of only translating who you're looking at without cameras. And here's
Well,
Meta's approach. It has to have
well,
cameras,
no,
and it should be better with
I don't think
cameras,
it
right?
uses cameras, to be clear. I think it is. I think Meta. What I'm trying to say is Meta and Apple are using the exact same algorithm. It's the exact same algorithm
Yeah.
of taking the input from multiple mics and trying to do spatial beamforming and figuring out, what is the direction that each audio
And if
source
they,
is coming from.
and so you're saying if they incorporate the camera data on top of that, it should get even better, right?
I'm saying it should already be better because instead of these mics being only in your ears, there are more of them distributed over an entire glasses surface, right? It's just there are physically more microphones with more data points, but that's probably very minor, to be fair. You're right to push back on that. If they do integrate the camera, which I don't know if they're doing it with the display glasses, I should have covered them, but that would, yes, you could do lip syncing and do even better, right? You could do something remarkable with that. Actually, you could probably even do it at longer distances. We did test doing it at quite long distance, actually, for the captioning, to be clear. So that we went all the way to the other side of the room and the person spoke quite quietly and the caption still came up. So I still think all of this is just microphones, but I'm saying that I'm sure the AirPods are very impressive, but I'm saying so is this. It works remarkably well. I think Apple and Meta are probably using the exact same algorithm.
Chester saying English speaking expatriates in foreign lands would absolutely use the live translate functionality once it arrives. Is the use case there for person to person communication, taking your iPhone out or your Android phone out and pointing it at the person so that the phone translates what you say to the other person?
Yes.
And then, is that how it works?
That's how it works today. Yes, on the Ray-Ban Meta glasses that you can get right now, right? So you can initiate by voice, but there's also a button in the home screen of the Meta AI app called Translate. You click that, and then exactly as you say, yes, the other person sees what you're saying, just as if you were using Google Translate, but you hear what they're saying in your ear. And so with the display glasses, to be fair, one of the things I think is going to be really, really interesting to try out is to do that where I'm not hearing anything at all. I'm just seeing the words that they're saying, and then they're seeing words, so you don't have to get this kind of like double noise effect. So, I mean,
what about closed captions for a non-closed caption movie?
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. Yes, the captioning was really impressive. Again, the whole monocular thing. Would I want to look at them for an entire movie? No. Would I want to have a quick conversation with someone in a different language like that? Yeah. We will get into the use cases in daily life of the Meta Ray-Ban display glasses in our review, and I'm using that word review to mean me spending a week or two with the things and seeing what it's like to use and then telling you what it's actually like to use in real life. So I plan to do all of these use cases and come back and tell you. The article we published was a hands-on impressions piece, which is 15 minutes of two 15-minute sessions. The review that we plan to publish next month, once we get access to a unit, will be a lot more comprehensive around that. But yeah, super interesting feature. And I agree with you. And someone should do a comparison, AirPods Pro versus Ray-Ban Meta, which is the best translation tool. It's a good idea. Do you want to get into, I think you're muted.
Yeah, that's definitely a project for a quality YouTube channel to put in the time to compare those two things, because that's going to be you got to get two people speaking two different languages, the two products side by side. You got to, that's a lot of time. Yeah. We don't have time for that right now.
I should also point out, as a Google Pixel user, the Pixel Buds have had this for years and nobody ever cares. When Apple, there's so many times, I just got to point this out, Apple announces a new feature and everyone goes, wow, this is the first time it was announced. And to be fair, Apple does a lot of firsts. I'm not one of those people that goes, oh, Apple's never first. Apple is an incredible company that puts out some amazing technology. The Apple Vision Pro and Vision OS is sublime. It is the best XR operating system ever with Vision OS 26. But specifically, there are some features Apple comes out with, and it's been on, a Google device for years. Live translation has been on the Pixel Buds for years now. Just wanted to point that out.
Well, so David pointed out that there was an app that has there's an LLM based app on the Apple Vision Pro. So this is a locally this is a little pet that you can have on your headset with local intelligence. And it's stupid as hell. It's a really dumb object because of the limitations of the LLM running locally and having no superior logic that's coming out of the server. And I'm seeing everyone in our comments talking about translating in a foreign country and the situation you would face if you had if you had a limited data connection. So
So
people are immediately going to
some
whether
of it
things can be done on device. And I
some
think
of it
that's,
is done on. I just want to point that some of this is done on device, because to do this translation for the Ray-Ban Meta, and I tried this in Spanish, I had to download the Spanish language to my phone. That's the first step. You have
mm,
to. So this was about a gigabyte download. So I actually don't know off the top of my head how much is done on device, but
oh,
something is in that
interesting.
gigabyte download.
Fascinating. Yeah. Wow,
You
that's
know,
a
I didn't do it.
big download in order to translate.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I think they're doing a lot of it on device. I really do. But the next
But
time I
that's
am,
Apple's device, right? Like that's
no, no, I'm talking about the
oh, it's a
Ray-Ban.
1 gigabyte download to the glasses?
I don't know whether it goes to the glasses or no, no, no. It couldn't be. I don't know whether it goes to the glasses or the phone. I really do plan to test this out the next time I go to a country where people speak another language. Um, all I know is that I opened the Meta AI app, and when I clicked English to Spanish, it said download this language pair, and there was roughly gigabyte download. I actually don't know whether it went to the glasses or the phone. That's all I'm
I've
saying.
seen those downloads for languages on the phone, like itself, to translate
Yeah.
languages in the flat apps. But that's fascinating.
So the only reason I'm pointing this out to say is I actually don't think this is fully reliant on Meta servers. I really do plan to test this out soon. I do plan to be in a foreign country to
But
try this out. Yeah,
but my point is the same. Is overall the thing that LLM that you were excited about and said, look at it, and I looked at it and went, yeah, that's cool. That's an LLM running on my headset, but it's dumb as rocks, right? And it's glitchy, and we'll
yeah,
come back to it when it gets good. But the question always becomes: is it getting good because it needs a server connection, or is it good locally?
yeah.
And
It's a big.
those are serious. You need to be in the middle of nowhere with no connection and get answers or translation, right?
Yeah, it's a big trade-off between running locally and cloud-based models, and that's something we definitely want to get into more over time. Let's finish up our smart glasses section with our final smart glasses topic, which is Michael Abrash and Mark Zuckerberg talking about the future of these smart glasses. Where do they see even the displayless smart glasses without a display going in 3 to 5 years in terms of the AI on them? And Michael Abrash talked about this idea of always on contextual AI. And then in an interview, we've got this all collated in our article on the website. Mark Zuckerberg said he thinks this will arrive in less than 5 years. And so today, the Meta AI you have on these glasses, it obviously relays through your phone, right? It either directs connectly to Wi-Fi or via your phone to the internet. But it's more importantly reactive and ephemeral. So it's in the moment. You ask a question. If the question is about something that you see, like you say, what is this plant? The AI realizes it needs to take a picture. So it captures an image on your camera. You hear the ka-ching, and then it analyzes that image. That's how it is today. Sure, there's the live AI feature that starts like a continuous conversation, but it's still limited to being within the context window of the large language model. And it's still that drains your battery very quickly. On the original Ray-Ban Meta glasses, you get about 30 minutes if you use live AI, and then the glasses are dead. With the new ones, you should get maybe about an hour or so, roughly. This feature, live AI, by the way, is exclusive to the US and Canada at the moment. But what happens if you go much, much further than this? Well, according to Michael Abrash, these glasses will, in the future, continuously always have an AI that is reconstructing the 3D environment that you're in and tracking your body so that it can create a all day log of your actions and interactions with objects in the world. And so it has full context of your entire daily life. And so what's the advantage of this? It means that you could ask the AI a question such as, how many calories have I eaten today? And without having to use a calorie tracking app where you scan all your food or type it in manually, without having to ever log anything, just by having worn the glasses all day, it can come back with an answer to you instantly that is accurate because it has watched you eat the food. Sounds crazy. Another answer you could get is, where did I leave my keys? You know, and if you had the glasses on at the time that you set your keys down, it would go, oh, you left them in the bedroom on the, beside the wardrobe. There are many other answers that it could obviously provide. These are just two examples. It could also be proactive and say, you've just walked halfway to your car, or you go down the elevator or stairs, and it goes, you forgot your car keys. They're up there in the, living room beside the TV. Car keys are the classic example of this, but it gives you an idea of what this would make possible. Now, there are obviously massive privacy concerns here, as I'll check the comments in a second, but I'm sure a lot of you are bringing up, in that this would be a goldmine for Meta's core business, targeted advertising. Being able to understand your entire daily life means it knows what you want to buy next, and that's obviously the massive business opportunity. But the upside is that you would essentially have a super high IQ, and every year or 6 months it would get higher and higher IQ personal assistant that has full knowledge of your life and can reactively and proactively help you in ways that my trivial examples don't even come close to addressing. Like being able to give you tips that let you achieve the goals you want out of life better, and having a cognitive guardian angel there at all times to make sure that everything goes well in your life. I saw someone walk.
Is that your language, a cognitive guardian angel, or was that Meta's language?
That's mine. I don't. Maybe I heard it somewhere, but I don't think I did. I think I was just trying. I think I came up with it, but I'm not going to pretend in case I heard it somewhere. It's not Meta's. I'll put it that way. Michael Abrash didn't say cognitive guardian angel. But yeah, so Mark Zuckerberg then was on an interview that was like recorded before Connect and put up at the embargo, I think. And he said that he thinks that this will happen in less than 5 years. So on a technical level, this will take massive improvements in the power efficiency of the chips and sensors and algorithms that are used to do environment construction, body tracking, semantic object detection. All of this will have to rapidly improve. Meta is working on custom chips. There are multiple custom chips in the Orion prototype that do allow you to do things like tracking more power efficiently. But there's obviously going to be some massive technological leaps needed here, but no breakthrough, right? Like if you just continue the current technological progress, it's going to happen eventually, right? Like there's no reason that what I just described, it doesn't need another like transformer level breakthrough. It doesn't need a material science improvement. That's just where you kind of get to eventually. But it's interesting that Meta's already thinking about this as like the eventual goal of the product. And Mark Zuckerberg calls this, his term is personal superintelligence. That's not what the AI industry typically means by superintelligence. Superintelligence actually means when AI gets more intelligent than all humans combined, like it's more intelligent than all of humanity combined, which I think is going to have much more profound implications than just what we're describing here. But he has kind of rebranded superintelligence to mean what I've just described as a very high IQ cognitive guardian angel.
Yeah, I hear nanny. I hear nanny when you describe that. And while many people would love a nanny, there are many people who would hate a nanny. So that's my thoughts on that. I'm going to have to get going here in about 10 minutes, unfortunately, given our time shift. So I've got a hard stop here. And I wanted to say to go check out the article that I just published on UploadVR.com. An embargo just lifted on the MotoGP Tour de Force, placing a trackside in Apple Immersive. So that's the first Blackmagic camera shot project available inside of Apple headsets. Go read my breakdown of why that is a breakthrough moment in spatial media to me. Really fantastic project.
And we'll discuss it on Thursday. We'll have a regular VR download on Thursday where we.
That was the reason I was doing this transition. Was we had a comment really early in the show asking us, "You're doing this on Monday. What about Thursday?" Yes, we're coming back on Thursday, and go check that out now. And what I wanted to do, David, since I wanted to just make a comment on the Hyperscape thing and what I was messing around with yesterday, and then probably leave you to the virtual reality section on your own. And you can come back.
Sure. So let's just bring up an image of the Hyperscape, and you can. So our next sort of half of the show will be solo, I guess, from me, but we'll just have Ian talk about the final topic we're going to talk about now because he has to leave. So we'll give Ian's take on the Hyperscape system that lets you capture photorealistic VR scenes on Quest 3.
So there's a comment up here from, who was it? I want to make sure I quote it right. It was someone with a sky in their name. They had an idea for an app. You gave me an idea for an AR app. You look at an object and it gives its eyes and mouth and it starts talking to you. I love that delightful little idea. So I spent my Sunday here at home with my Mac creating a machine learning reference object of a 3D scanned object that I made of a little cat tower that's effectively a llama. It looks like a llama. It's got a little tail, a head on it that the cat scratch. It's got a base that the cat scratch, and the cats can go inside the llama. It's got a little tunnel in the middle that the cats can go inside of. I spent Sunday messing around trying to see what could I do with this because Apple has an object tracking system built into their operating system where I can take my iPhone out and follow the directions to scan the llama. And I did. I scanned the llama over a course of about 10 minutes. And then I had that 3D model on my phone that I could pull up inside of my headset immediately, which was really neat. Suddenly, I've scanned it with my phone. Now it's in my headset. I've got a digital twin of that llama that looks a little bit off because the lighting isn't quite matched, but it looks really, really good. There's all this fur over the llama, and it actually came out really well in the scan. But my point is, the next thing I got to do in order to actually do something useful with that model is I got to take it to my computer, train a machine learning model in order to tell the headset how to find the llama inside of my environment. And all of this is going, where this is going is I think what I can do is I can now that I've trained my system to recognize this cat tower as an interactive object, I can walk up to the object and I can go, doot, 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 and a UI can pop up on top of this object. And I can interact with that UI. I could hit doot, doot, and now a game has started with my cats on my object. I can take my finger and run along the object, and the system can know that I'm touching the object that's being tracked by my headset. And now I'm playing a game of building cat points. There's all these animations that come around, and my little tap thing that I did, the doot 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 doot, that little gesture called a cat over to my room because now they know this is fun playtime in headset. I've trained them over 3 or 4 play sessions that when I make that gesture on this object, it's time to come play. And so now I'm playing with this cat tower, and the cat is going haywire and fighting with me over like me playing with it. But I'm getting points because I'm playing with a cat on an object that's in my space. David's going to walk you through Hyperscape here at the end of this show, or maybe now, but it's the complete opposite of this spectrum. It's what if Meta wanted to capture your whole room? And what if you wanted to use that room as a visiting space for others to come and visit? So now you've got a solution here where you just clean up your house once. You get everything in its pristine place, your room, and then you do this scan that David is going to walk you through, and you get it back from the server, and you could actually have anyone you want come into that space and not see all the specific things you've got laid around. That could be your entry area, is this scan that you've prepared for everyone else. And the software can figure out the differences for you and help you avoid the things that have changed. But you can have others come into this space. I know these sound like unrelated things, scanning an object and turning it into an interactive plaything. But you're also scanning an entire room here in Meta's system, and you're also not necessarily controlling what you're scanning. You're giving it away to Meta. You're getting back a beautiful thing to roam around in, but it's not what I just described. Now I'm actually thinking in my house, wait, what if I scanned all my cat appliances, all my cat tools? What if I scanned the cat's food bowls? Could I put UI around the food bowls? Could I have an app that's just for managing my cat's lives inside my home? right? And now I've got an app that manages their feeding and tells me all of the ways to take care of them. And oh goodness, we came back full circle to what these applications are going to do for us as humans, right? All right. I think I should get out of here, David. I don't know if you want to talk about Hyperscape
Yeah,
now.
we will now. It makes sense to just do this as our first virtual reality topic now. I'm going to just quickly toggle into the solo studio just to make this a little bit easier, one person. And then just to be clear, this is not the end of the show. We are now going on to the second half of the show to talk about virtual reality. I'm just switching over to a slightly different studio. I will be back in a matter of seconds. Okay, hello everyone. I should be back now and you should be able to hear me. So now we're going to have the virtual reality section of our show. We've finished the smart glasses section, a lot of interesting stuff. And we're going to start our first virtual reality topic with Horizon Hyperscape. So just to be very clear here, Ian was talking about two separate things and kind of relating them in certain ways, but I want to be clear about the difference. Ian was talking primarily there about the feature of Apple's Vision OS that was introduced last year in Vision OS 2, which lets you track a static object. So he was using it to track his like cat stand. And so he's talking about how to track that in the first place, you have to start by scanning this one object. And then you could also, in theory, kind of bring that in to a VR MR experience as a virtual object, or you can use that scan to let the system know what this object looks like so it can track it. And by track it, I mean give you the specific location of where is that scanned object in the world. And then he's talking about how you can use that to build interesting apps by, letting you touch a different part of this cat stand and then having certain gameplay mechanics triggered. And that's super interesting. But just to be clear, that's something that shipped in Vision OS 2 last year and not what we're specifically talking about today. What we're specifically talking about today is this new feature called Horizon Hyperscape on Quest headsets. And it doesn't scan one object, it scans an entire scene. And how it works is you take your Quest 3 or 3S and you initiate the scan. The first step is that you just pan your head around the room over the course of maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds at most, depending on the size of the space, and it creates a new scene mesh, just like you would when you're meshing your room for mixed reality, when you set up a Quest 3 or 3S for mixed reality. That is only the first step, though. The second step is capturing the detail, and this step is quite laborious and takes about 5 to 10 minutes. You have to walk around your entire room and bring your head close to every area in the room to capture the detail. And as you do this, the mesh will disappear. So it's essentially like a little game of make the mesh go away everywhere. You see the mesh overlaid. When you get near it, it disappears. Your head being near it makes it go out of existence. Of course, what's really happening there is that the camera is getting close enough for the resolution to be sufficient for it to pick up all the details. And it's capturing a bunch of different images that are being uploaded to Meta's servers. That's your work done, but the Hyperscape scan is not yet ready. The next step is that now that all those images have been sent up to Meta's servers, they are processed server side. This takes 1 to 8 hours, depending on how big the space is. And then after that, you get a notification. The notification may not be shipped yet, but after that, it's done. And you can now visit it in VR with photorealistic graphics. And so I tried this at Connect in person. I went into a room, a real room, and I looked around it and saw some of the scanning process. And then a few minutes later, I went and tried a pre-mapped, obviously, we didn't wait 1 to 8 hours, a pre-mapped version of that room. And it looked identical. It was, if Meta had blindfolded me and put me in this room and then pulled the blindfold off, or I guess just kept the Quest's displays off and used it as a blindfold and then brought me into the room and then turned it on, I wouldn't initially have been able to tell whether what I was seeing was pass-through or the real room. That's how good this is. Now, initially is the key word there, because of course, if you get close to details, you're going to notice that this is not entirely real. If you get close to very small text, you'll see it smudged. I did my classic deep squat test where I squatted and looked down underneath furniture, and that's where the illusion does fall apart. You get a lot of kind of blur and smudge because the headset never saw that. Theoretically, if the person scanning had done a deep squat, that would be captured, but this is something that you would have to take into account if you wanted to make your scan as good as possible. Now, those are only really minor trade-offs. In general, this was the most realistic automatic VR scene capture I've ever seen. Like, I have obviously tried Meta's Tiramisu prototype that has 90 pixels per degree. And so that's obviously like the sharpest VR. But even though this was obviously just through a 25 pixel per degree Quest 3, through that, once you get past like the resolution not being anywhere near retinal, it's the most graphically realistic. It is genuinely amazing that this is captured from a Quest 3. And to be clear, none of this really happens on device. The processing happens on Meta servers, and then it is cloud streamed to you. This is actually using the Avalanche PC VR cloud streaming technology that Meta has been developing for years. This is them shipping it in a product. So from your perspective as a user, you don't really know or care about this much unless your internet connection is bad. But on a technical underlying level, none of this is happening really on your headset. Your headset is just the camera and then the client for the cloud streaming in the end. That said, the cloud streaming is very low latency, very high quality, felt best in class. This was obviously at Meta's campus, so I'm probably right beside the server. I will need to test this when it ships to the United Kingdom. Right now, it is only available to the United States, and Meta does plan to bring it to more countries soon. The other thing that Meta plans to ship soon is multiplayer. And this is where I think it'll get really, really interesting. So you'll be able to invite people over as Meta avatars. And I think the way they're describing this is working is that it will go through Horizon Worlds. So you'll be able to basically have two options for making a Horizon world. One is, as we'll talk about in a few topics, you use Horizon Studio or current desktop editor and you build it, using a classic IDE, and that's an interactive world. The other option is that you make a Hyperscape world. This is from my understanding. It may be slightly different when they roll things out. A Hyperscape world that is static, right? This isn't interactive. There's no interactivity here. You can't pick up the plant pot here. These are all one giant Gaussian splat. It's not decomposable or relightable. But given that trade-off, the advantage is that it's photorealistic. So you'll be able to scan a real-world location and invite people around to visit it photorealistically. And yeah, this is like one of those things that we talked about years ago as being one of those pie in the sky, far off things. To be clear, like you can do this today with other Gaussian splatting tools. It's not fundamentally unique. We talked about before how you can do this with Vario Teleport, except instead of your headset, use your phone. That's $30 a month. So the equivalent of a $2 per scan, because you get 15 scans per month. That's Vario's Teleport, to be clear. And that shows you the kind of price that's needed to make this a profitable service, because there's a lot of cloud processing going on here. So Meta is giving it for free, but the trade-off is that it lives within Meta's platform. Vario will let you download the raw files from the Gaussian splat and use it however you want. Meta keeps it on their servers, and it is limited to their platform. It's a trade-off, free, but Meta platform, or pay Vario $30 a month and get 15 scans. Which one of these two you prefer is up to you. The other massive limitation of Vario's solution is it is PC VR only for the rendering. It's done locally on your PC. Vario is not doing a cloud streaming system. So that's another big trade-off. But, look, I just want to be clear how great this is from a technological perspective. It works so well. I've been talking to people who are in the US and who have been using it. And some of them have literally said to me, I read your hands-on impressions at Connect. I thought you were exaggerating. I tried it in my home and holy shit, this is amazing. If you are a Quest 3 or 3S owner in the United States right now, go and test this out. Don't take my word for it. It is stunningly good. And it points to a very interesting future. This is the biggest VR announcement of Connect, I would argue. Yeah. So future stuff. I've talked about how near term it's going to come to other countries. Near term it's going to get multiplayer. I think if you're talking about on the scale of years, where does this go? Decomposability would be something that we really want, right? As people are talking about in the comments. I do want to be able to pick up just the plant pot or remove it or edit parts of the room. That's not really how Gaussian splats work. So you're going to need some, breakthroughs and research there. But this is one of those areas that is going very fast. Something I've seen from papers over the past year or so is relightable Gaussian splats, which you may think if you're in this field, wait a minute, how does that even work? But there are papers that are showing this with some very clever techniques. So relighting your room would be something you could do over time. And then the other thing that I'm really kind of interested in is when do you get this plus codec avatars? Because today, visiting this with your meta avatar is cool, right? You get spatial audio, you're together, you can point at things and talk. But I think where this really gets magic is codec avatars, and not just the first ones, which will probably be heads only. I think once you get this, but it's full body codec avatars, and I'm to be clear, this is probably, we're talking 5+ years out. I think that gets to something where this starts to be used in a bunch of different industries as a fundamental part of their job. You talk about real estate, right? Today, you can obviously go and view pictures of a apartment or even a Matterport thing on your phone. This is a lot higher quality than Matterport, to be clear. But imagine when you can literally, at full scale, walk around this thing. And I'm not talking about, some of these things already have 360 photos. This is a different kettle of fish. This is a different level. And not only do people do that, but to have a meeting with the real estate agent where they walk you around the home as a full body codec avatar, even initially as a meta avatar, that's going to be an interesting thing that some people are going to want to use. But over time, it'll get more and more valuable. Quentin M is asking, where do we go to find these Hyperscapes? There's an app on Quest that you should be able to bring up, Hyperscape Capture, that should have some of the demo ones. But over time, I think the idea is that they're going to integrate this to Horizon Worlds. So a Hyperscape will be a type of world. You will have cartoon Horizon Worlds and Hyperscapes as these two different types, but they're both going to use the Horizon Worlds infrastructure, from what I've heard. Yeah, so let's see if there's any other questions here. D1360, will devs get access to make MR experiences even more immersive? I think you mean doing, crazy stuff like getting a textured 3D mesh so they can, move your furniture about and things like that. Really interesting idea, but again, this is all being done cloud side, so I'm not going to see that yet. Actual is saying, if you're spending hundreds of thousands on a house, you're probably going to want to visit in real life. Sure, but what about just the screening for which ones you go and visit, right? I don't know what the housing market's like where you live, but in certain parts of England, it's brutal, and you've got to go through a lot of different, viewings, and being able to quickly see one is great. Also, what if you're moving country, right? What if you want to move to a different continent and you need to find a place? A lot of people today rent or buy, mostly rent, places they've never been to, or they do a very expensive flight over and, try a few places. I think this could be a good intermediate step over time. Yeah. And as Dave Porkins is pointing out, World Labs AI has some impressive AI-generated Gaussian splat environments. I've tried a lot of Gaussian splats, and I want to be crystal clear, Meta has not invented a new technology here. What they have done is delivered best-in-class quality. There are a few of the environments I tried here. Gordon Ramsay's home kitchen, amazing. The UFC octagon literally felt photorealistic. One of the things that this does remarkably well is reflections. So reflective surfaces like TVs and chrome fridges, even as you move your head around, the reflection looks right. The other thing that this one does better than any system I've ever tried is the external environment outside of the capture area. So I'm in Gordon Ramsay's home kitchen, and I'm looking out the windows, and I'm seeing his garden. And nobody walked through that garden. That was not part of the scan. The scan took place inside his kitchen. But yet I'm seeing a bunch of the details in 3D at the right position of his garden. Now, it's not photorealistic like the actual scan area, but a lot of Gaussian splats used today, the quality fall off for the stuff in the kind of background periphery is awful, right? It turns into smudgy, blurry nonsense, right? It's like someone took a paintbrush and just did some, basic brushes. Hyperscape captured the external world better than anything I've ever tried. And so one of the demonstrations is a cafe that sells baked goods, bakery, cafe of some sort. And I'm looking out onto the street through these giant windows, and the street looks really, really good. And I've never seen any other Gaussian spotting system be able to do that before. They all capture the background, but in such low detail that it's almost impressionistic. Hyperscape's the first one I've tried that can do that realistically without having the people walk outside and capture that as part of the area. So, yeah, I think you should really try that. Gregan is saying, I'm in the UK and it works now. To be clear, this is not Hyperscape Demo. Hyperscape Demo is the app that Meta released last year at last year's Connect, which gave you 6 scenes. So 2 things about that. They did roll that out beyond the US, but it's only 6 scenes. And also that's using the old tech. So I've tried it, obviously the Hyperscape Demo from last year. This is higher, as well as letting you make your own scans, which is obviously the flagship feature. This is higher quality than that. The scans I tried here, like Gordon Ramsay's kitchen and the Octagon in that cafe, looked more realistic than the Hyperscape Demo of last year. So you're seeing advancement over time. And to be clear, I tried the demo last year. Maybe they updated it since then. I doubt it. I haven't seen any news about that. So this is, that's a key thing to point out. This is better than the Hyperscape Demo. I would call the Hyperscape Demo near photorealistic. I would call this like essentially photorealistic, other than some minor details. It looks so real. I want to be very clear about that. James Howe is saying Hyperscape Capture has been working for me in the UK since Saturday. Maybe by soon they meant literally 2 days. Maybe you're using a VPN or have in the past or something like that and it's picking it up. I've heard a lot of people being, trying to do this in VPNs and feeling. So I don't know, maybe in the past 24, 36 hours they've rolled it out or something like that. I don't know. I'll have a look after the show. It wasn't when I checked a few days ago when I got back from Connect. So yeah, that's topic number 1 of virtual reality. The star of the show for Connect 2025 for me. Huge implications for the future. And once you get decomposability and things like that, you can start to make interactive experiences. Even without that, you can imagine, when do we get to the point where we can have codec NPCs to go way pie in the sky here? Ian's not here, so somebody has to do the pie in the sky stuff. When can you put codec NPCs, as in photorealistic NPCs, into a Hyperscape environment and build narrative experiences that don't require physical object interactivity? There's a lot of potential here. And I mean, even just for visiting interesting places, this kind of virtual tourism thing used to be a really big talked about promise of VR, and people tried to ship it with 360 photos, and believe it or not, a lot of people actually did. I think the number 1 use case, according to some of the people who worked on Samsung Gear VR and Oculus Go, was just 360 photos. People just wanted to see these cool photos of places they'd never been, scenic, amazing parts of the world that they want to go visit. And I think this could be a potential for that, right? You could imagine whatever you happen to be interested in, right? There are many, many niches in this world and many places you might want to visit. You can virtually visit them with photorealistic graphics with this technology, as long as someone scans it in VR. And I think there's a lot of potential there over time. You could imagine even sets for famous TV shows, right? I don't know, even some shows have real world locations that are not literally the set, but are analogous. Like, the cafe from Twin Peaks, someone could scan that in, or I think, has New York made the cafe from Friends yet? I don't know if they have. Some of the apartments people have made, recreation, Seinfeld's apartment. You can imagine all these kind of things over time being used for virtual tourism. So big potential use cases. And I mean, even for your own personal life, right? You move house, you move apartment, you scan your old apartment, you can go back and get memories there, and the same reason we take photographs today. So super interesting stuff. Let's go on to talk about our next virtual reality topic, which is very quick, just Meta's tease of the next evolution of the Horizon OS system interface. So back in May, Meta started to roll out an overhaul of Quest's Horizon OS UI called Navigator. It is very slowly rolled out. Initially, it had this big, ugly background, gray haze, but Meta got rid of that. Let me see if I can find like the gray haze here anywhere in our images. They got rid of it and then moved to a system that has just the background, such as pass-through, dimmed. And so that's the current evolution Navigator. On screen at Connect, they're tweaking this a little bit better to have the icons here in the center. They have the app rows offset in an interleaved way, which is Vision OS. Let's all be clear. That's exactly what Vision OS does. They also have these little 3 menu items over here. Vision OS, very similar copy. But this little bottom row is, I guess, unique. I don't think they've done that. They've also moved the time up here. And I don't see the battery for the controllers anywhere. So maybe they got rid of that, which would be annoying. But they say this is still a work in progress. So I have the images now. Here was the original Navigator that had this ugly pink-gray cloud background in it. Here is the revised Navigator as it is today, where you have these icons kind of distributed around here. And these app rows are not interleaved. They're all just kind of one big grid. And then you have these toggles here, and then you can see the kind of refinement of this coming. So why this is interesting is that with V81, Meta said that it's actually stopped making Navigator the default for new people. It's sort of slowed down its rollout out a little bit. And I think a lot of that is because they've realized, it's not quite ready yet. There's still some rough edges. It's a big change for people to get used to, and there's more refinement that needs to be done. So this is just a very, very brief preview of what that's going to look like over time as they improve it. Quentin says, I'm totally okay with them stealing the Vision OS UI. Meta's never been good with UIs. Yeah, I broadly agree on that. We saw the iPhone's UI relentlessly copied by Android back in, the late 2000s. There are a lot of cases of this. If someone gets it right, they get it right. And I think this is better than what they had before. I've spoken before about how I dislike the original pre-Navigator Quest UI because everything is a window. Everything is an app. So if I just want to bring up the camera to record something, I'm launching a whole app, which then pushes my other windows out of the way. If I want to bring up the quick settings, it's an app. With Navigator, it's an overlay on top of it. It's like the Windows Start button. You press the Start button, and it goes on top of your windows. You click what you want, and then it goes away, and your windows are where they are. Imagine if, you had like a specific window layout on your ultra-wide or triple monitor setup, and then by opening the Windows Start menu, the Start menu was just another app that then, popped up and then pushed all your other apps out of the way. I think that was a terrible design. This one's a lot better. The library also being another app in the pre-Navigator UI is terrible. With this, you want to launch something, you open up the overlay that goes on top of everything else, you launch the app, and it goes away. For most people, the purpose of these system interfaces, right now at least, is they just want to launch the game they want to play. Let's be real, Quest is mostly uses a game console. They don't want to have to poke through Windows. They just want to. I think this is good for most people because it gives you the primary objective of, I see a giant list of apps right in front of me, and I can kind of click that. The default UI for at least the Navigator that I have today is the apps, right? It's the center UI. It's your app library. That should always have been the way it was. It's crazy that this is what it's taken to get the app library to be default. I also love that the camera is an overlay, right? I want to record something. It's an overlay. It's not pushing all my windows out of the way. So I'm a big fan of Navigator. I do think there are some rough edges, though, and I'm glad to see that they are pushing forward on it. Okay. I'm seeing people saying, speaking of UIs, they've never had a worse experience than with the new iOS with the liquid glass. I don't use iPhone, but I do use Mac, and I am not a fan of liquid glass either on Mac. Everything looks a bit, it doesn't look nice. It's ironic because Vision OS is beautiful, and I really use that word in the real meaning of it. It is just sublime. Vision OS is my favorite operating system I've ever used in my time on this planet, as of Vision OS 26, and it just looks and feels and works great. But I don't like at all what Apple has done with iOS 26 and Mac OS 26. I think that design language works so much better in spatial computing than it does on flat screens. But each to their own. I'm sure I'll get used to it over time. I don't like how my Mac icons look furry and not furry, fuzzy. But yeah. Julia is pushing back and saying that they butchered Mac OS liquid glass on iOS. It is fine. Yep. I don't own an iPhone. I only know that I hate it on Mac and I love it on Vision OS. Though Vision OS isn't really liquid glass, it's its own thing, despite what people are always saying. Okay, let's move on to our next virtual reality topic of the MetaConnect special, and that is the Avatar Fire and Ash 3D teaser, which is now available on Quest for a limited time. So if you have a Quest 3 or 3S, is another thing you can go try out. Open the TV app in your library, Horizon TV as it is officially called, and you will find it right there. It is a short couple of minutes teaser, but it is in very high resolution 3D, and it looks great. It's very sharp, and it's got a good 3D effect, and it runs, as a window that you can bring up in theater mode or position however you want. And obviously, this is not big in itself. It's only a teaser video. It's not the movie, but this is the first step in Meta's giant partnership with James Cameron. That partnership has been one of the things that we've been really tracking quite closely for the past almost year since it was announced. The partnership, to be clear, is not just with James Cameron for his own movies. It is also with his new company, Lightstorm Vision. Lightstorm Vision has the goal of making 3D a ubiquitous part of Hollywood and elsewhere production. So James Cameron's, what do they actually do? Like, that's their goal. They basically sell camera equipment and software and tools that mean that if James Cameron is right, it will be just as easy to produce in 3D as 2D. So you will produce normally like you would for 2D, but their tools will make it so easy to just also ship to 3D. So the idea would be that any movie that is made today, even by a small production team, by using Lightstorm Vision's technology, they can just as easily release it in true 3D. And that would also be the case for television shows. They also want to do it for live stuff. I'm sure if you were watching Connect, you'll hear that James Cameron almost spilled the beans there. He was, talking about sports and, corrected himself and said, "Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that." And Andrew Bosworth, the CEO of Meta, joked, "Oh, you can't take this guy anywhere." So it's clear that they also want to do this for things like live sports. And this is a big partnership, and it's going to be a big part of the future of Horizon OS as a content platform, especially building towards the ultralight headset with a tethered puck that Meta plans to ship late next year, according to our sources. They really want to have a lot of high quality 3D movies and TV shows that you can watch on that to really make it worth it. So this is just the first step in that. They haven't said, but it seems very likely that we're going to get the full Avatar 3 movie on Quest 3 at some point, right? Like, why would they do the teaser like this and have this partnership? Not, that is my speculation, though they have obviously not actually confirmed that. But yeah, it's the first tease, and you see that they now have the technology built into Horizon TV to do 3D. It looks really sharp. I think they're probably using compositor layers, the time warp layers of John Carmack. And so I'm very impressed by that because there were so many ways this could have not been done right. But I think on a technical level, the video is done great. The frame rate is a bit difficult to get used to, the switching between 24 and 48, but that's, a creative choice by the director. It's not fundamental to the Quest headset or anything like that. And yeah, I think this partnership with James Cameron is going to be a massive part of Quest's future and Horizon OS's future. Let's see if we... Hussein says, "I couldn't find a way to enlarge the screen when watching the trailer like I could old Meta TV." So you can open it in theater mode and just resize it on the corners. You just resize the window by pointing your cursor towards the corner and then dragging out. You should... especially use theater mode. It looks like a full screen icon underneath the bar. It brings you into theater mode. And one of the great things about theater mode is you have this little brightness adjustment that adjusts the dimming of the pass through or real back or pass through or virtual background, such that you can really kind of focus on it. I think some people are saying, James Howe is saying you can't resize it. It's locked now. I tried it 12 hours ago at home and I could also resize it. But I think potentially there's a difference here between V79 and V81 PTC. So let us know for people who are claiming you can't resize it. I resized it yesterday, Sunday, in my Quest 3 in the UK here. So I don't know what's going on with some people. Imaginary is saying you have to close every other app. Yeah, I guess they've got there's some sort of edge cases here. I can only tell you what happened on my headset, both in the United States when I was trying it and at home. Both places I could resize it to whatever size I wanted it to be. It sounds like a bug. You're saying people are saying I tried to resize it and didn't work. It just sounds like a bug. I'm sure they'll fix this sort of stuff by the time they get to actual 3D movies. So I think that's enough discussion on that for now. It's obviously going to be a huge part. The other context I guess we should add is that Vision OS obviously has on both Apple TV and Disney Plus a bunch of 3D movies. Meta said that Disney Plus is coming to Quest, but gives zero details on whether this is a native app or a web app. A lot of the time Meta says that something is coming to Quest, it is just a web app. Spotify, for example, it's not really Spotify, it's the Spotify web app. You can't download any of your music and play it offline. It is just a container for the web. So we'll have to see, is Disney that or a real app? Because Peacock, for example, on Quest is not a real app. It's the web app. But Prime Video is the real one. You can download Prime Video on Quest. So I don't want to get too excited about the Disney announcement until we know what that actually means either way. Okay, so Paradise Decay says, imagine watching a 3D film and having the sets in the background using Meta's new scan feature. That's a super interesting idea, but there's a kind of similar idea that brings us on to our next topic. And so that is Blumhouse's upcoming Quest 3 app. So Blumhouse is like the production company behind a bunch of the most popular horror movies. I really should have brought a list here, but it's in the article. They make, Megan, as well as standby, apologies. Paranormal Activity, Insidious, Sinister, The Purge, Split, Get Out, and the cinema adaptation of Five Nights at Freddy's. So they make a lot of the most popular horror movies of the 21st century. They are now releasing a Quest app soon called Blumhouse Enhanced Cinema. And the idea here is that you can watch these movies, but not just watch them on a giant screen. You also get a custom 3D background where immersive effects come in, a 3D environment. So it's kind of similar to the way, on Apple Vision Pro, we've talked about how you can get the Alien Earth 3D environment while you're watching Alien Earth or anything else on Disney Plus, and how on the HBO Max app on Apple Vision Pro, you can be in Hogwarts. This is somewhat similar, except it's a specific app from this one production company, and they say that there's also going to be like special immersive effects. They don't want to spoil anything, but I think stuff will jump out at you to try to scare the shit out of you. Let's be honest about what they're going to do here. And so each movie has its own custom environment with these custom effects here, and I think they even might change throughout the movie. So very interested to try what this is actually like. Could get very scary if you're not into horror movies. Probably not for you, but if you are into horror movies, that's definitely something you probably want to try if you enjoy getting that scared. So could be fun. Let's talk about our next topic, talking about the difference between native apps and web apps. The Discord native app is coming to Quest. So this was confirmed on stage during the developer keynote. Discord is coming to Quest. This is something I've seen people ask for in our comments a lot and say, I really hope Discord comes. This is going to be the native app, and they confirmed that this will include activity support. So that means if you use Discord, you'll know what this is. The way you see that people are online and what game they're playing on supported platforms, you will then, for Quest, you'll be able to see that they are in, it will probably say Meta Horizon playing Beat Saber or whatever. Obviously, that's only if you do enable that. It's an optional feature if you don't want to. And presumably then you'll also get, notifications and calls in Discord that let you stay connected to your friends. From a gaming perspective, this is huge. Discord is obviously the most used gaming communication platform in the world by far now. I think being disconnected from your Discord and having to use the separate Meta Quest call system is probably something that puts some people off buying a Quest in the first place and using it once they get it. So I think this is massive news for the gaming side of MetaQuest. See a lot of people in the comments really hyped for the Blumhouse thing and having great ideas about, imagine watching Alien and a face hugger jumps your face and randomly in darkened mixed reality. You can imagine some really terrifying use cases for that previous story, the immersive special effects. I'm sure we'll get YouTube videos of people being put into it, not understanding what it is and screaming, unfortunately, but hopefully people are going into it understanding exactly what it is. Chrome Colossus is saying that they're baffled and irritated by Discord's UI and they want less of it, not more. So I am also not a huge fan of Discord. I don't mind it as a chat app. What I hate is that it's replaced forums and even FAQs and wikis, right? You used to have like documentation for games and, forums where you could easily search and find if someone had an issue with something or, check like release notes. I hate that Discord is used for release notes and to replace forums and, in place of like an FAQ and a wiki. Oh, just go check our Discord and search, spend 10 minutes searching through something and scrolling through people shit posting just to find some basic information that could have been on, a 5 kilobyte HTML page. That's the old man in me. I'm not even old, but that's me getting old, I guess. Julian Avila Polanco is saying knowledge will be lost. I agree with you very much so on that. There is definitely a knowledge lost. Yeah. So Discord should be an interesting one for sure. Yeah, I see a lot of people here really not liking Discord. Oh, Gray saying I'm not a fan of Discord for the same reason. Jorg saying I'm with David. Discord is a horrible place for stuff you want to go back and look up later. Bring back forums. Forums were great. Why can't we just have, if everything has to be a centralized app, why can't we just have an app that does forums in an app? Why does everything have to be just a giant chat? I don't know. Well, how did that happen? How did everything become a giant chat? Who knows? I guess the chat as a UI is not going anywhere now that large language models use them, and I think it's useful in that context. But you could even imagine a lot of improvements to how we interact with LLMs that aren't just chats, that are more like archived forums. But that's far beyond this topic. Let's move on to our next topic, which is Meta Horizon Engine. I think arguably for VR, this could be one of the biggest announcements of the Meta Connect 2025. So there are a lot of people who don't like Horizon Worlds, and they have some very good reasons in many ways. Especially when it first launched, Horizon Worlds was far too graphically simplistic because everything was made by using 3D shapes in VR. It was an interesting idea, right? Everyone should be able to make everything from inside VR by just pulling and stretching shapes and placing them. The problem is that everything just looked like, that a child had made it, unfortunately, because you don't have the professional tools back then. So the biggest change to Horizon Worlds by far over the past year has been this move to deprecate the NVR tools. They still exist, but they're not supported anymore officially, and to move on to the Horizon desktop editor. So that's obviously one of the biggest changes that has brought Horizon Worlds to look a lot better. If your mental model of Horizon Worlds is based on like a screenshot from 3 years ago, it's a lot different these days. It is dramatically different from when it launched. But of course, it's still not, super high fidelity. There's still limits. And one of the issues here, according to Meta, is that they have been using Unity this whole time. Horizon Worlds has just been a fancy Unity app. And so for the past few years, they have been working on a project that was internally called HSR and has now been branded as Horizon Engine. And it is a new game engine that replaces Unity. And it's specifically designed for this use case. It's designed for Horizon Worlds to be a metaverse platform. And so according to Meta, it has 4 times faster loading and supports far more concurrent users so that you can have 100 plus people in the same instance. So both of these 2 big improvements are very crucial for any metaverse vision. The idea here, according to Zuckerberg, is that he wants to make it, when you're jumping from one Horizon world to another or going into your first Horizon world from the start of your session, he wants to make it feel more like you're clicking a web page than launching a full game. So you can already try this today in the Horizon Home that is part of V81 PTC, because it is using the new Horizon engine And so is Horizon, the new Horizon Central, the one you see here. So if you've been to this new Horizon Central, that is using the new Horizon engine. Other than that, Horizon engine will be rolling out on a per world basis. So it's not something that just overnight every world changes. This is going to be something where the worlds need to be, I think, pretty much rebuilt in some ways, or just at least adapted to work. And according to Mark Zuckerberg, it also brings better graphics than the Unity version. So this has been one of Meta's massive core tech infrastructure projects over the past few years, and this is it now starting to ship. And I think the concurrency thing is very, very interesting. I think when Horizon Worlds launched, it was something like 8 people per instance, and that's not the metaverse. I think today the current Unity one maxes out at 32 or 40, something around that. I think 32 for most people, and they had some 40 experimental ones. But 100 is where you start to get to the point of like, that's much more of a metaverse platform. That's very interesting. That lets you have these very large feeling events. And so the other thing they're rolling out already with the new Horizon engine in Horizon Worlds is Horizon Arena, which you may have seen like teased on stage, where you do have, up to 100 people in an events arena for some sort of event. So to move on to the next topic, without really moving on because it is directly related, is how you build these new Horizon worlds, and that is with the upcoming Horizon Studio. So again, this is not one of these things where it all just changes overnight. It's a per world thing. Creators will need to upgrade to the upcoming Meta Horizon Studio, which is replacing the Horizon Worlds desktop editor. I don't think it's literally like a from the ground up app in terms of the UI of this. The engine underlying is different, but I think they're basically just upgrading Horizon Desktop Editor to be Horizon Studio. It's like a new brand for this upgrade that leverages under the hood the new engine. And so as well as being able to create worlds for Horizon Engine, this new editor also comes with a greatly upgraded, a greatly upgraded AI assistant, an agentic AI assistant that can generate just about anything. So we did cover fairly recently how Meta rolled out something called Creator Assistant in the current Horizon Worlds desktop editor, and it lets you describe what you want, and it will interact with the editor and pull in assets to create it. But ironically, the current Creator Assistant AI can't actually AI generate assets. It pulls stuff from the asset library. So that is the 3D models that you've imported, as well as there's a giant like public asset library in Horizon Worlds of 3D models that are created in professional tools like Blender and 3ds Max, and Meta's made publicly available to use. So the new AI assistant, as well as being able to generate environments that aren't just islands, we talked about recently how they can generate islands, will be able to AI generate objects on the fly and use those to populate the world. And so I saw a kind of like behind closed doors demo of this in action, and it was really wild how well it appeared to work in this demo, which I want to be clear is a demo, so I don't know if that was real or faked in any way. But the idea here is that if you're a programmer that's used something like OpenAI's Codex, you'll understand how programming is getting to this point where, for some people, in some cases, you tell this agent what you want, and it goes and takes the time to build it and then comes back to you and says, I've done this, like you have a junior engineer available for you at all times. That's kind of the idea here. You will still be able to build worlds traditionally with this, right? You can still, with Horizon Studio, import a 3D model of any kind of standard 3D file format, and import assets and do all that. But you can also use AI generation. And to be clear, in case you're not familiar, you do the functionality of Horizon Worlds in this editor with TypeScript. So this is obviously, anytime this is building gameplay mechanics, you're using TypeScript. And one of the things in the demo was, like it said, generate a pistol for the player to fire, and the pistol appears down there. And we were able to instantly on our phones, which are connected to this session. The crazy thing about this, and this is already really the case for Horizon Worlds in the Unity version, is there is zero compile time. This is all live. The editor here is not really like a traditional editor. It's actually more like a client that's in the Horizon world, but with interactivity enabled. like editing enabled. So instantaneously, you roll out a change. There's no compile time. You're not waiting for anything. It just is instantly available in multiplayer by default in Horizon Worlds. So it is this kind of, there are a lot of things you can criticize Horizon Worlds about, and we do all the time. But you can see how they are getting. I've said years ago when people said, "Oh, Horizon Worlds is a joke. Meta's going to give up on it within a year. It'll get cancelled." I said at the time, no, it's quite clear that what Meta is going to do is the opposite. It's going to throw billions of dollars at this problem and try to upgrade the technology gradually over time until it isn't a joke. And I think they're starting to get there, right? I think you're not, the graphics that I tested on Horizon Engine, they don't look like, red matter or anything like that. We're not talking about that, but they do start to look more and more like something that is genuinely impressive for something that requires zero compile time and that you can, quite easily build with this. It's like a midpoint between, placing objects in a virtual world and a full on, Unity or Unreal style engine. And I think if you look at the rate of progress, a lot of the theme of VR download is looking at the rate of progress in past and then just extending it out in the future. I think the people who think that Meta is going to drop Horizon Worlds tomorrow are just as mistaken as they were beforehand. And maybe it doesn't work out. I'm not trying to say Horizon Worlds is going to work out. It has a lot of competition. You've got the Fortnite editor that's quite similar in terms of what you can deliver, but they don't have AI generation yet, but they probably will very soon. You have things like Roblox. Rec Room is kind of pulled back on some of their in-VR creator tools, and they're doing a similar strategy, but they leverage Unity, so they're kind of a little bit constrained there. But I think, you're going to see a lot of this over time. And just to be clear, when I'm giving that example of like generate a pistol for the player to fire, that's instantly something I can pick up in VR or pick up on mobile. All of this is just handled by default. The physics, the interactions, the audio, it's all the core tech is handled for you. The next thing they did in that demo was, generate some aliens that are flying in for the person to shoot at. And, these aliens fly in and you can shoot at them. A lot of this is going to be constrained by like how good are the models. And I think Meta is probably using Llama 4, but they haven't directly confirmed. And so over time, as Mark Zuckerberg's multi-billion-dollar investment in bringing in these AI researchers to, build future better versions of Llama, they're going to be what drives this to get better and better. It's going to be similar to a programming in other form factors like OpenAI's Codex. It's going to get better and better and better over time as the rapid evolution of AI continues. But again, if you want, you don't have to use the AI. You can import 3D models and do all the TypeScript yourself. It's optional whether you want to even use AI in this at all. Let's see some of the comments here. Yeah, Biggs is saying, I believe in the tech long term more than Horizon's core design. They'll get there, but it's been a rough IP. So, I think there might be a rough trip or something. I think Andrew Bosworth, the CTO of Meta, even joked about that on stage. He was like, "Yeah, this has been a rough few years for Horizon, but we're still, we're still keeping to the plan." James Howe is saying, one of the guys who worked on Roblox and Fortnite has moved to Horizon Worlds. He was quite vocal on X during the engine reveal. Yeah, Meta has been hiring a lot of people. Like, this is a massive area investment. People are asking like, whoa, what, Meta's put billions in Horizon World and they're just legless avatars? Well, the legs got added a few years ago now. And a lot of those billions are on building this future tech in the background that they're rolling out. And, Meta says that this is not the start or the end. They are going to be doing a lot more core tech upgrades. They have massive plans for Horizon Worlds, and they're going to spend billions and billions of dollars on it. And maybe it feels, but it's not going to feel with the mental model you might have of Horizon Worlds of 5 years ago. It's very, very different today. I Want a Lot says, Meta's showcase shows Meta has lost interest in VR as zero VR announcements. We have 7 VR topics today. There was Horizon Hyperscape, the UI, I guess that doesn't matter. you have Avatar showing that they're bringing. Okay, you don't want to count that as VR. Let's talk about just strict VR. Hyperscape, Horizon Worlds, and the thing you have to realize about VR gaming is that Meta stopped announcing those at Connect years ago. They now announce those during the summer, during the general gaming events. So Summer Games Fest, they announced a Deadpool VR game. I mean, Henry tried it. I'm not the games guy, but Henry tried it and said it's great. You can go read his hands-on impressions on UploadVR.com, where he said that the combat's great. We'll have a review of that when it comes out. I think it's November, but that's literally a Marvel Deadpool VR blockbuster game. What other VR platform is coming out with games like that? When's the last time Sony or Valve came out with a AAA game? 5 years ago for Valve. Sony at launch for PlayStation VR 2 and then never again. So I don't know. I like if the standard is to compare to anyone else, they're literally putting out a blockbuster VR game every year. But I agree with you that, like, there's no headset this year, but we didn't expect a headset this year. Quest is on a 3-year cycle. Quest 2 to Quest 3 was 3 years. So we would expect a Quest 4 next year. Now, as we'll talk about on another show, what that Quest 4 looks like next year and what it's called, there's big questions about that. But we were never expecting a mainline Quest this year. That was never on the cards anyway. And we made that very clear at UploadVR.com. We were very clear that there was not going to be a new Quest. I think Horizon Engine is a big one though too, right? But I guess to finish up on Horizon Engine and Horizon Studio, this is still limited to Meta's platform. That means to visit these worlds, you have to be on a Quest headset or on a smartphone or on the web. And the smartphone and web are obviously 2D, flat screen, and VR is only on Quest. That's actually quite a lot of potential, people when you think about it, right? A lot of people. But do I personally want to play Horizon World on a smartphone? Absolutely not. Zero interest. On web, it would have to be great, and there's nothing yet that I would want to play on web. But fundamentally, could I see myself doing it at some point? Maybe, probably not. In VR, that's different. You can, as this expands over time, you can see more and more be done there. And like one of the Horizon Worlds I like to visit is the comedy club. It's pretty good. Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is what I always used VR for. I visit similar VR chat worlds, and I used to in Altspace VR, which was great. I liked their shooter. I tried it a little bit. They have a new one out actually in Horizon Worlds, but it's not something I want to play a lot. But it's quick fun in the same way that Rec Room's paintball is. Freesky is saying there wasn't much mention of VR in the keynote, but there was VR demos that connect. Correct? No, everything I'm just mentioning was mentioned in the keynote. They actually used VR again. In past years, people were complaining, and us too. We wrote an editorial about it. How Meta was calling mixed reality. It wouldn't say VR. This time they said VR a bunch. Like Hyperscape is a VR app. I guess you are in mixed reality for the scan, but the Hyperscape itself is virtual reality. And for the context of VR, Horizon Studio is VR. Blumhouse Enhanced Cinema is VR. But I take your point that there's no new headset, but that's because there's no cycle for there to be a new headset this year. And then the reason there's no blockbuster game is because they moved to announcing those at summer. They did the same for Batman Arkham Shadow. They announced it in the summer. Yeah. But I understand also why this year is also all about the smart glasses, the introduction of the first smart glasses. Next year, though, we don't expect there to be any new smart glasses with a display, and we do expect there to be a headset. So next year will be a lot more about VR and mixed reality from our expectation. We think next year with Connect will be all about the puck headset. But we will get onto that another time because we could spend far too much time talking about next year. This is a special where we're trying to, and feeling as always, keep it constrained to talk about what's new at Connect 2025. Okay. That actually does finish our topics because we had switched the other one around. I guess there's not much else to say about Connect. We've covered everything. This has been quite a long show now. I think we are up to is that 4 hours? No way, that's 4 hours, is it? Is it 3 hours, 4 hours? It's hard to tell. My little counter is glitched out here. Oh, it's 3 hours 15. Hard to tell. Yeah. Hussein's pointing out we got the Xbox branded version this year. Yeah, it's okay. It's cool. It's a special colored version. I wouldn't call it a massive launch though, but I guess if you enjoy that, that's great. Onakazi, did you ask about third-party headsets? Did they say anything other than they aren't cancelled? Yep, we did, and yep, they're not cancelled. They're still in production. I did not expect them to happen this year. I think a lot of people wanted them to, but I don't. Why would you want a chip that's going to be outdated in a year anyway? We expect that next year's Connect, when the Puck headset's introduced, it will have a new chip. It won't just use Quest 3's chip. It'll have a new chip. The irony is that a lot of people are repeating the failure of Quest Pro by doing the outdated chip. The HUD glasses are doing it. Samsung is doing it, right? According to everything we know, it's using the XR2 Plus Gen 2, which is just a souped up version of Quest chip. There's a very real possibility that Samsung release a headset in the next few months. We'll talk more about it on Thursday, but that Samsung release a headset in the next few months, and then in a year's time, Meta releases a headset for half the price that's twice as powerful. So I don't know if you'd want a headset right now when we're near the end of the 3-year new chipset cycle. You know? PH Wizard is asking, did anyone test or confirm third-party messaging for Meta Ray-Ban display, Android or Apple messages? Android does work as far as I'm aware. iMessage does not, because Apple does not allow it. If you want that to happen, go ask Apple. That's not something Meta can override. APUC is asking, do I think it's good that Zuck's live demos field should have just run ads to show off the features instead? So we talked about this earlier, but I'll point it again. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's net bad, but I don't think it matters that much. As I pointed out before, when Steve Jobs showed off FaceTime for the iPhone 4, right? The iPhone that added a selfie camera and this new feature called FaceTime that we all know today, it failed on stage. And he blamed the Wi-Fi. In his case, it probably was the Wi-Fi, but we don't know. Face ID, when Apple first showed on stage for the iPhone 10, it failed. FaceTime works great. Face ID works great. It doesn't really matter that much. I think it's embarrassing, and they probably should have had some sort of backup or something where they do just show a video of it working in case the demo failed. But it also shows confidence in the product, misplaced confidence in the event setup, I guess. But like, I don't know. I'm torn. I don't like the Apple pre-produced stuff much anymore. There is a little bit of I'd like to see a live demo. I'd like to see Tim Cook stand up and show off his new products this way. But at the same time, you do risk this. And it was a mess, let's be honest. Like, the demos were a mess. If I were Meta, I would redo it. I would just say, look, we're going to do a live stream. You don't need to have everyone there for you don't need to invite people out. But if I were Meta, I would just live stream again and just say, hey, look, we're going to do this demo again. We maybe invite some press or something. I don't know, but you don't need to have thousands of people there this time. And just say, hey, look, we just want to prove that this all works. We fixed the bugs. Here it is. Here's the demo. That's what I would do, but I don't think they're going to bother and do that. Siegfried Gaming asks, when will Qualcomm Snapdragon XR3 come out? So to be clear, Qualcomm is quite confusing naming schemes. So let me just bring up a little chart so that I am able to show you what we're talking about here. The XR2 is not a model number. It's a tier. So the successor to Quest 3's chip would be called XR2 Gen 3, not XR3. Now, you may be asking a different question of, do we think that they're going to introduce a higher tier, not just a successor, but like a competitor for Apple's M series chips that they have in the Apple Vision Pro? And that's very possible, but then you would also have to do the same trade-offs of an external battery and stuff like that. Come on. Stand by. I will be able to bring up this image in a second here. Apologies for this, folks. Just need to figure out where the hell we put this image. Okay. Should be able to get it up now. Yeah, so this is kind of an older one, but hopefully this illustrates the point well. Okay, so it's very confusing. This is actually not the chart I was looking for because it's even more confusing. But AR1 is their chip for basic smart glasses that are, well under 100 grams and look somewhat reasonable to wear. Here is the chart I was looking for. Then you have AR Plus, which is just like a slightly higher end version of that. AR2 over there is for like very high end glasses that are full AR glasses, basically. And they're actually using split rendering for it. So the AR2 is fundamentally designed for a compute puck or phone that is wirelessly powering AR glasses. Now, here's the VR segment, right? God, this is so confusing. I really hate Qualcomm's naming. XR2 is the name for the chips that go into standalone headsets that aren't very, very low end. They also have an XR1 for very, very low end headsets. The XR2 Plus is just a slightly higher version, but the generation, Gen 1 to Gen 2, is the improvement. So the next one, to explain this in a way that isn't horribly confusing, I apologize, I've not done this well, would be called XR2 Gen 3. And we expect to see that next year because there was a 3-year gap between XR2 Gen 1 and Gen 2, right? 2020, Gen 1 was introduced. That's what runs in Quest 2. 2023, Quest 3 gets Gen 2. So you put that forward another 3 years, 2026, we would get a Gen 3. And I expect that is what will be the next push for standalone VR. Now, complicating that is that Meta reportedly plans to use a puck. So does Qualcomm make a new chip specifically for pucks that it has a different kind of thermal profile? I don't know. We'll have to find out. I think a lot of people are very interested to try these smart glasses themselves with the display, the Meta Ray-Ban display, and I recommend you do. Go and try it in a store if you're in the United States. Don't take my word for it. And please, for the love of God, don't take the Hypefluencer's word for it. Go and try it yourself and see what you really think of it. Shall Alaska asks a really interesting question. Did Meta have first refusal on XR2 Plus Gen 2, but gave it away after canceling Quest Pro 2? As far as I'm aware, yes. So the Samsung headset and Play for Dream and Sony's headset are using the chip that Meta would have used in a Quest Pro 2 last year and potentially this year in the LG one. But since Meta canceled that, they use it for those as well. Ian Hamilton asks, who is this Ian Hamilton? Did Meta help pay for the launch of the XR2 line in order to get first dibs? When Qualcomm says XR3 is a new product line, are they saying they don't have a partner for that? So first question, yes, Qualcomm and Meta have a partnership that, while not explicitly giving Meta first exclusivity, demonstrably has, right? The AR1 shipped first in Ray-Ban Meta, the XR2 shipped first in Quest 2, the XR2 Gen 2 shipped first in Quest 3, and Meta engineers are actually involved in the design of the Qualcomm XR chip. So there's a big partnership there, and while they don't explicitly say anything about exclusivity, it's clear that Meta does have first dibs. When the next question, when Qualcomm says XR3 is a new product line, are they saying they don't have a partner for that? I think they're saying, well, it doesn't exist yet, to be clear. They're not saying it's a new one. They're saying it would be a new product line if they were to make it, but it doesn't exist yet. I think the answer is, yeah, that they don't see a need for it was what they told us. I think they currently want to stick with the current thermal profile and cost profile they have. I think a lot of it comes down to nobody else wants to sell a $3,500 headset at any kind of scale that would interest Qualcomm, whereas Apple is able to leverage the fact that these chips already exist for for Macs, and then they built their own R1 chip because they're Apple and they're one of the only companies that can get people to spend $3,500 on a headset at any kind of scale. Sure, there are other headsets that are that price, but nobody is selling Apple has probably sold somewhere around a third of a million, 500,000, somewhere in that era of Vision Pros. Nobody else would be able to sell a $3,500 headset at even that scale. It would be on the scale of tens of thousands. So for a company like Qualcomm to be interested in making a custom chip, it has to have scale that matters. And so I think if Meta came along and said, yeah, we want to make an Apple Vision Pro competitor, I'm sure it would kind of get worked out, but nobody, even Samsung, is using the XR2 plus Gen 2, right? Because they probably want to come in at around $2,000. That's a guess. We'll talk more on Thursday. Just a guess. I don't think Samsung wants to go head to head with Vision Pro at 3,500. So there's no demand for a chip to quite do that. Julian Avila is pointing out that the M5 Apple Vision Pro will destroy Muhan unless AI saves it. Yeah, I mean, the M5 Apple Vision Pro will be several times more powerful than Samsung's headset, Galaxy XR, whatever it's going to be called. We'll talk more about Samsung's headset on Thursday, but yeah, that is going to be a big problem. Samsung's headset's been delayed for so long that while its resolution is still going to be great, it's still going to have, equal to or better than displays than Apple Vision Pro. The chip itself, while still ever so slightly better than what's out there in Quest 3, will not exactly stand the test of time in our view. Because, again, for the classic chart that I made, there's Quest 1, there's Quest 2, there's Quest 3, and there's Samsung's headset down there. That's CPU is actually one of the areas where it's a stronger difference. You can see it's actually notable. GPU, it's not really that much of a difference. Here's again Quest 1, Quest 2, Quest 3, and Samsung's headset. So what we expect might to happen, this is probably a better chart for understanding the Gen thing, right? We expect to happen is you get an XR2 Gen 3 that comes along and pushes way, way past that chart in something like Quest 4 perhaps, or Quest Air, or whatever the heck they're going to call it, Quest Pro 2. We don't know what they're going to call it. Yeah. Okay, we will talk more about Samsung's headset on Thursday. We are going to have to end the show now. This has been a really long show. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Connect has been a huge, huge week. 20 articles around Connect, and we had some non-Connect articles as well. We are going to keep on top of all the Connect stuff that has been announced and see how well does it match up to what was described when it actually ships. That's Horizon Engine rolling out more widely, Horizon Studio, Hyperscape getting multiplayer and coming to more countries, Blumhouse Enhanced Cinema, the update of Quest's Horizon UI. We're going to keep on track of the glasses side, conversation focus. We're going to have a look at what developers are building with the SDK. We're going to see what do people think of Meta Ray-Ban display. Do my eyes just uniquely hate monocular? Or is that a more widespread issue? Who knows? And we'll obviously see what some of the other features that are rolling out, like Garmin integration, are like on the glasses. There's a lot to keep track of. I think the biggest feature update that we're very, very keen to try is that finger swiping thing for the Meta Ray-Ban displays, Meta Neural Band. In December, when that rolls out, we will be telling you exactly how well it works or doesn't work. And yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. We really appreciate you being here as usual. I hope you find our coverage to be nuanced and detailed. And I hope, we've made everyone aware of all the Connect news they need to be aware of. Thanks so much. We will see you on Thursday for a regular episode where we will talk about Apple's new immersive video, the Samsung headset, and more. Thanks so much. We'll see you in the future.